Sam, Ready? Lisa, Jim, Kevin. Okay. Ready? I'd like to call the May meeting to order. Kathy, please do the roll call.
Mrs. Briscoe? Here. Mrs. Tunney? Here. Mrs. Ost? Here. Mr. Andreessen?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Here.
Mrs. McMillan? Here. Mrs. Zielinski? Here.
Okay, please stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we will start this evening with public communication. First person, I'm just going to go in the order that I was given. So the first person is Brittany Coker.
Hey, Brittany Coker. Many of you know me as the PE teacher at Mokena Junior High, but I'm also a mom of 4 boys. I have Keegan, who's in first grade here and loves school at MES. And then I have Shane, who is 5, Dean and Quinn that are 4, that all have autism. So I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to expand your resources to look for more options for kids with autism. It will greatly impact my family. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you for this opportunity. Looking forward to hearing what you have to present. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Coker. Next up is Tessa Quinlan.
Hi, everybody. I'm here tonight to discuss the most recent report of Ms. Volpe's report regarding special education programming update. I'm in agreement that something needed to be done. This is nothing I haven't mentioned to some board members, superintendent, principals, including former director of special services were already made aware of. I had been trying to gain their attention for many years now in my efforts to be proactive with allowing Mokena to be a leader in getting ahead of this influx of numbers with children diagnosed with autism and/or significant development delays. I'm happy to hear of the discussions Mrs. Volpe has had with the prospective people to lead this charge. I do think it's long overdue, and I think it's great we start sooner than later, but it's a reaction to increased numbers rather than being proactive to and getting ahead of the increased numbers of the community emerging into school age. It's been everything I've wanted from Mokena since they pulled from the co-op to start their own. I'm lucky that my son graduated from a program that had been established and supported by Mokena 159 and was given great opportunities and choices while in attendance. He attended his home school district for most of his school-age years, and I'm thankful for that. Most families don't want to leave their home district, but when their child is not provided that option within their district, there is no other option but to outplace. So it'd be nice to see these choices for families begin here at Mokena 159. However, I'm asking that we really discuss, question, and explore it in detail. I ask this because I do not want to see this program reach a level where it has to dissolve, such like the dual language program did. The dual language program looked great on paper, and for the first few years it looked and seemed to work great. But after those initial years of operation, it started to have its cracks, but got overlooked and finally reached a point where it was no longer salvageable. I do not want to see this happen to the program. These families, especially the students, should not be placed in that position to feeling like they were forgotten. So I'm asking to please really question and make sure that all T's are crossed and I's are dotted. I believe it's a great thing that's happening, but please understand that these families are with children that already have a lot on their plates. They are not ones to be used as guinea pigs for process you are not confident in. Which leads me to pose a thought. Back in the day, my son's class was made up of an array of disabilities. This class allowed diversity with an already self-contained class. My son went to school with nonverbal, non-speaking individuals as well as children with Down syndrome. These children with Down syndrome were role models for my son. Where are our children with Down syndrome within Mokena now? There is not one in any of our classes within all 3 schools. Where are they? Do we not have one child with Down syndrome between preschool and 8th grade age who resides in Mokena? I ask we also think of that community too, because I'm one to not exclude, but to be inclusive to varying disabilities. Thank you, and I look forward to great things here at Mokena 159 for the special needs community.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Quinlan. Next up, we'll have Amanda Montgomery.
But it'll come into play later. Alright, so I am not here to talk about the special education changes because I just want to hear. I just want to express my continued gratitude to Mrs. Volpe, Mrs. Chorley, Ms. Brosco, and Ms. Carey for maintaining great partnership. But what I did want to come here to talk about was that I did want to highlight some key items. This is unrelated to special education. Some key items with respect to compensation that have happened recently or are about to occur. The last board meeting, we had a few administration contracts as well as a couple of others that were approved with a raise prior to an annual review occurring. The second point is the Director of Student Services contract had changed from $118,000 to $133,000 within about a 2-month period with a start date in July. The third part is the Student Services Coordinator position, possibly approved today, is going to be approved for roughly $96,000. Just wanted to give some figures. So each year, ISB provides TSS, the teacher salary study. So I wanted to highlight some of those areas, the surrounding districts, with respect to that study. I'm going to only list the numbers for the starting and ending salaries for teachers with bachelors. So I only selected a few. Manhattan 14 is the range of $41,000 to $82,000. Mokena 159 is $44,000 to $69,000. I rounded to the whole number, the whole thousands. New Lenox 122 is $47,000 to $73,000. Frankfurt 157C is $51,000 to $54,000. Summit Hill 161 is $59,000 to $96,000. Please keep in mind, with the exception of our district, the teacher to student ratio of these other districts is at or below the state average. I wanted to highlight these figures as our current MTA agreement is ending this year and perhaps is already in negotiations. As we move forward with changes as a district, I wanted to provide the board members with their own copy of Profiles in Courage. And I also wanted to leave you with another quote from this book. If there is a lesson from the lives of the men John F. Kennedy depicts in this book, from his life and from his death, it is that in this world of ours, none of us can afford to be lookers on, the critics standing on the sidelines.
Well, I assumed if you picked that up, it'll be. Okay, I was giving you the benefit of it.
Thank you, though.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Montgomery. Next up is Kelly Fensky.
Hello. Some of you may remember I spoke here in August of 2021. For those that don't remember and those that don't know anything about it, I spoke to bring attention to the fact that my son was attacked on the playground during recess on his 3rd day of kindergarten, and nobody noticed. Not one person on the playground noticed. At that time, the ratio of adults to students was 1 to 44. And the ratio for all the kids on the playground that day was 2 adults to 88 students. After being told that the district was not in a position to increase staffing and provide a safer environment, not only for our child, but for all children, we made the personal family decision to withdraw our son from the district because it was clear that the district would not prioritize safety. Since that time, we've observed from the periphery what has gone on in the district, and I would like to address some concerns and questions. A recent report shows that the district will be losing 2 building aides at MIS. It's my understanding that there's a current adult-child ratio of 1 to 50. When my son was attacked, the adult-child ratio was 1 to 44. I would like to ask the board to please put children's safety at the very top of the list when making staffing decisions impacting supervision of students. I don't know what these decisions are based on, but are they based on a perceived lack of need, or are they due to financial reasons? Now, moving on to the subject of finances, I'd like to present questions and concerns regarding the following items that were brought to light in recent months. The board was recently asked to approve salary increases for administrators, but the administrators had not yet turned in or had their evaluations completed. And I would like to know if this is something the board does routinely, is make financial decisions without all necessary information to make those decisions informed. The second thing, fraudulent charges were detected on Allison Cerrone's P-card months after her departure. Shouldn't her card have been collected and deactivated immediately upon her termination? Is there a current offboarding process after resignation or termination? If not, I would like to propose that the board adopt a formal policy to prevent this from happening in the future. Next, the Director of Student Services contracted salary changed from $118,000 to $133,000, a $15,000 change in 2 months. This is a significant increase, and it would be beneficial to hear dialogue regarding the cause of the increase. In addition to annual salaries that were recently disclosed, the 12 administrators' contracts that were posted in the April meeting agenda show the district will financially cover 100% of the following benefits: medical, vision, dental insurance for the administrator, their spouse, and their dependents, 100% term life insurance, and when applicable, 100% of the administrator's mandated contribution to the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, Illinois Teachers Retirement System, and the Teachers Health Insurance Security Fund. Are these compensations in line with surrounding districts? I would like to see the actual cost of these benefits, so total compensation package, combining the dollar amount of their salaries in combination with the financial value of the district's 100% contribution. I guess I'll conclude by just letting the board know that viewing these meetings in recent months, it is disappointing and frankly disgusting the way that this board has treated the 2 new board members. You guys allow the community to attack them while you guys sit idle and say nothing. These new board members have done nothing but try to implement changes that would benefit the school district and the student population. I mean, that's fine. I'll go ahead and come to the next. Thank you.
Okay. Next up is our speaking language pathologist.
Yay.
All right, well, okay, first, before I begin that, I just want to say the MTA would like to welcome our pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, and speech-language pathology teams. Some of these teams will be updating you tonight, including myself. All right. Thank you. Happy Better Speech, Language, and Hearing Month to my coworkers in the Speech and Language Department. We would like to thank the Board of Education for always providing our department with the staff, continuing education, and tools we need to help our students succeed. We appreciate past and present administrators who have recognized our areas of specialty and valued our professional collaboration when making decisions in the best interest of students. Once our team came back in person during the pandemic, we made it our mission to screen all the students' articulation skills at MES. We saw a huge increase in numbers of students who needed our help, so the whole department got to work adding interventions to their schedules, which was on top of our current IEP caseloads. Since we were bursting at the seams, we requested a speech-language pathology assistant be hired to help with the interventions, and thank you for granting that request. The post-pandemic skills gap has led to a jump in numbers of children meeting IEP eligibility status for speech and language services. Our national organization conducted research and here's what they found regarding that jump in numbers. Identification of speech-language delays more than doubled pre versus post-pandemic among children 0 to 12 years old. The highest risk was among the youngest children. Communication-related diagnosis rates increased 107% among preschoolers, age 3 to 5, and 136% among infants. More than 2/3 of speech-language pathologists surveyed reported an increase in speech-language referrals since 2020. One meta-analysis found that communication was the sole neurodevelopmental domain at significantly increased risk for impairment among babies in utero born during the pandemic. Why is this happening? Some of the possibilities. Caregiver-related stress, including childcare and income loss that affected their availability to respond to their children's early communication attempts. Screen time increased in households. Fewer opportunities for in-person language and social exposure. A drop in well-child visits affected pediatrician referrals. A lack of in-person speech-language services. Caregivers noticed the effects of lost time for the past 4 years and have requested evaluations. The challenge for speech-language pathologists is accommodating climbing diagnosis numbers when many of us already have full caseloads. Speech-language pathologists know that a child's speech and language skills are critical to their social, educational, and workforce success in the future. Our 5 speech-language pathologists are currently providing 8,270 minutes to students in our district. 2 years ago, our department started with an FTE of 5.6, and going into the fall 2024-25 school year, we will have an FTE of 5.4. We are thankful that numbers will continue to be monitored as the current research indicates this increase in incidence is not slowing down. We thank our speech-language pathologist assistant, Seema, who will not be returning as our interventionist in the fall. She helped to prevent numerous students from ever needing a special education speech and language evaluation. In 2022 to 23, she served 48 MES students and dismissed 36. In 2023 and 24, the needs of her MES students were noted to have increased as well as her numbers of students she served. She saw 58 of those students and dismissed 15. Thank you, Seema. We are lucky to have had you as part of our team, and our students have been extremely fortunate to have been helped by you. Thank you to our SLPs, Christine, Carrie, Brittany, and Nicole. Thank you.
Ms. Sullivan, could you share the data? Yeah. I think you answered, yes.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Sullivan. I shouldn't have gone anywhere. Next up is MTA.
Oh, you got it. This one's a short one. Woo! All right. The MTA would like to thank all the people and groups who organized and participated in Teacher and Staff Appreciation Week. We thank the student councils for the teacher appreciation notes and teacher raffles, the district office and Mokena Educational Foundation for breakfast, and last but certainly not least, the PTA for a fun, friends-inspired lunch and a much-anticipated snack cart that stopped by our classrooms. We truly felt appreciated, so thank you. We'd also like to congratulate the teachers on the preliminary IAR results. It's no surprise that we had excellent results. We wish everyone a safe, relaxing, well-deserved summer vacation. Thank you.
Sullivan. Next up is our kindergarten teachers.
Good evening. Sitting with me is an amazing team. I'm a little biased, but we are amazing. I'm Debbie Blank. We have Audra Morrow, Lindsay Robert, Jamie Okerzinski, Emily Wardell, Noelle Nez, and Martha Katie. Kindergarten in May is busy and vibrant. We continue to work hard to develop foundational academic skills while nurturing the social emotional growth. In reading, students continue to develop reading skills by practicing phonics, sight words, and comprehension. In May, we integrate books and activities about spring, flowers, trees, trees, and more trees. Oh, wait, sorry. And Mother's Day. We've been doing a lot with trees. Our kids are tree experts. We work on writing activities that reinforce letter formation, spelling, and sentence structure. Students have been busy writing Mother's Day poems, tree appreciation cards, and journaling about their opinions on where to plant a tree. Kindergarten 8th grade buddies has come to an end. We had a celebration at the junior high. The 8th graders guided the kinder buddies through the different stations and ended with a tour of the school. Students learned to work together, follow directions, take turns, and communicate effectively to achieve common goals. The program was again a success, and we look forward to continuing it again next year. And for those of you that don't know, next year will be the first group of kindergartners as now 8th graders. So it's come full circle. We want to thank the 8th graders, and we wish them the best of luck in their high school endeavors. And we thank them for being so kind to their kinder buddies. They really have made a friend for life. In May, kindergarten classrooms start to run like a well-oiled machine. Students know the classroom expectations and routines, and it's kind of bittersweet at the end of the year that will be ending, but it also signifies that these little people must spread their wings and fly. First grade is waiting, and our kindergartners are ready. Kindergarten is such a tremendous year of growth. We feel proud to teach such a special year of development. As kindergarten teachers, we continue to create meaningful experiences that inspire curiosity, collaboration, and the love of learning. We'd like to thank you all, and we hope you have a wonderful summer.
Okay, thank you for all of our kindergarten teachers. We will move on then to the next agenda item, which is the Bond Issuance Notification Act BINA hearing. I declare the opening of the public BINA hearing. The Board of Education of Mokena School District 159 intends to sell bonds in the amount of $250,000 for the purpose of increasing the working cash fund of the district. Does the board have any further comments? Okay. Have we received any written comments? Okay. Does the public have any written or oral comments? Okay. All persons desiring to be heard have been given the opportunity to present oral or written testimony with respect to the proposed issuance of the bonds. I move that the Board of Education close the BINA public hearing. Is there a second? Second. Oh. Okay. All right, we'll go with Julie for a second. Any discussion? Okay, please call the vote.
Mr. Andreessen?
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
Mrs. McMillan?
Yes.
Mrs. Ost?
Yes.
Mrs. Tunney?
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski?
Okay. Thank you very much. For those that might not have been following some of our meetings, we have been talking about this for the past couple months. So essentially what we just did was the district has some excess funds in our debt service funds. So Fund 30, for those that keep track of the numbers. And you have to use those funds for debt service bonds. Over time, the district has incurred some interest on those funds as those property taxes. So they accumulate. It's not uncommon for all the districts to do that. So we worked with our financial advisor who advised us to do that, to do this working bond. And what we're going to use those proceeds for is we're going to actually purchase 2 buses with those proceeds so that we don't have to lease them and incur interest expense. So that when we lease them, we have to get interest expense on that lease. And then after 5 years, you have to hand the bus back to the bus company. Where if you buy them outright, hopefully they get at least 7 to 10 year life. Once they're paid for, we don't have to pay any of that. So the taxpayers in the district now can not have to worry about that lease expense, and we can put it towards other uses on that. So essentially, in a nutshell, that's what we just approved, and that's what the hearing is the mechanics around unlocking those funds to purchase 2 buses, so we don't have to lease. So, okay, alrighty, enough about that. Okay, next up is the presentation for Dr. Shaw, the amended budget.
Thank you, Mr. Bush.
right, so tonight we're taking a look at the tentative amended budget. The timeline for the tentative amended budget, we're in May, so the Finance Committee got a look at it Monday night. This is the same presentation that was given at the Finance Committee. And so what we're requesting is that the board approve the tentative amended budget. There's a couple steps that go along with that. So approving the tentative amended budget, we need to put it on display. I've got a couple copies up here, and if the board approves it tonight, we'll post it on our website. And then we also need to hold a public hearing, which needs to be 30 days from tonight. So we'll have a little conversation after this presentation is done, because our next board meeting is 28 days away from tonight. So we'll need to have an additional couple days after next month's board meeting to hold the amended budget hearing to be in compliance with the 30 days. This is a look at the original budget. And what I want to point out in the original budget is the bottom number under the totals, the over-under. Our original budget, we had $27,756,000 in revenue with $27,247,000 in expenditures for a deficit budget of $2.49 million. In our amended budget, we have $25,688,000 in revenue and $27,667,000 in expenses, with our over-under just under $2 million at $1,978,000. The original budget, those are the numbers that I just read. You can see that our revenue increased by $932,417, or 3.77% difference from our original revenue estimate. The increased revenue came in from a couple different sources. The first and the most was from our tax levy, which is the biggest percentage of our income. We did have a higher equalized assessed valuation than anticipated. Our new property, which was greater, we're in a landlocked district, so getting new property isn't something that you really expect to do because we don't have a lot of new development, but we did have some. So we had some increased local levy money. We also had a tech grant. Good job, Mr. Henson. So we received some additional money in a tech grant. We received the ISB maintenance grant this year. And we also received additional money in our IDEA grant from what Mrs. Volpe was able to accomplish in some grant writing. In our expenditures, we did increase by 1.54%. Our budget was very tight, and a lot of that increase was, again, some of the outgoing SPED expenses correlating to the special ed grant increases. And that was a very tight expense budget at 1.5% differential. This slide shows the exact amounts in the local levy where those adjustments were. And we also had some adjustments in our O&M referendum. We talked in our finance committee specifically about how we used Fund 21 for some of our security expenses. A little bit of the timeline of the budget. It's approved in September. So some of the timing, we approved the budget, and then we develop our levy, which funds our budget, and then we get our final levy numbers in the spring, right around the time for the amended budget, so we can tighten up those budget numbers. Where does our money come from? The biggest percentage of our money comes from our local levy. 85% of our money comes from our taxpayers. So for the community of Mokena, it's very supportive, pays their taxes. We have a 99.5% collection rate, very supportive community. Some state money, evidence-based funding, and then we had some federal money, a little higher than typical with federal, as we had some ESSER 3 money and some of the money that we received through some of the COVID acts. Where does our money go? The majority of our money goes to salary, benefits, and purchase services. Purchase services are also people that we hire that are not actual staff members. We also have a significant amount of capital outlay, and our capital outlay is directly related to our Fund 21 referendum money, where we're purchasing HVAC systems, concrete work, parking lots, and we have a little bit, so $27,667,000 in expenses this year in our amended budget. So we do need to determine a date for the budget hearing, which cannot be on June 12th. Typically, we have the third Wednesday would have been June 19th, which would have been between our timeline for the 30 days. But since June 19th is a federal holiday, the board meeting was moved to June 12th. And so we find ourselves with 28 days between board meetings. And so we need to pick a different date to have the budget hearing.
In June, with vacations, that might be thrown out the window. I'm not sure how people have on their plates, but so if we can't have it on June 19th, I guess the logical selection would be, based on Mondays and Wednesdays, would be Monday the 24th or Wednesday the 26th.
Monday the 17th,
Would that give it time?
it would. The next June
This is
12th is
12th.
4 weeks, so it's 28. 29, 30 is Friday the 14th, so any day, Friday the 14th or later.
Got it.
Yep.
I was going by the 19th.
Right, yeah,
As
yeah.
opposed to the 12th. Got it.
Yep.
Okay, so Monday 17, Monday 24, or Wednesday 26. Any- On which day? I would imagine it would be a quick meeting. Hearings usually are pretty quick.
It would be this presentation and then the opportunity for the board to make comment and the public to make comment. Very similar to the binding hearing we just held.
Okay, 17th, does that work for anyone else? Or
Are we saying 6 PM though? 6 PM.
well, I think it's got to be done by 6 p.m. you're saying, right? So what's your cut? You need to be out of here by 6:15.
Would Wednesday work better for you, Julie? The 19th? Oh,
Can't
the
do 19.
26th? 26th?
Getting pretty close. I need to file and, yeah.
Okay, with that said, is everyone comfortable with the 17th at 6? And then if you have to leave for the vote, we technically have 6 people technically need to be here for the 15, or,
We'll need to insert that date into the motion later in the agenda. Thank you, Kathy.
June 17th, 6 p.m. Got it. Okay. Any questions for Dr. Shaw on the amended budget? Okay. Just so the community is aware that, we did review this just 2 days ago in the Finance Committee, so the board had ample time to ask questions there as well. There's a lengthy discussion on many items, so don't want, the community to think that the board doesn't ask questions. There's many opportunities for the board to ask questions with different settings. Okay, moving on then to information reports. We'll go to the Finance Committee. Selinsky. Ms. Selinsky?
I have a question for Dr. Shaw, a follow-up to the Finance Committee meeting, follow-up to the transportation update, Dr. Shaw.
Yes.
At some point in your report or an action item, it is you'd noted that the transportation fund will be in a deficit because we are buying the buses. Or after we buy the buses, we will roll out that transportation fund into a deficit position. Is that expected to happen in fiscal 25, 26, or at what point are we reaching at what point, are we falling below the 33%? And then at what point will it be actually a deficit?
The deficit is this year, FY '24. We spent $759,000 on buses this year. Yeah, $579,000 on buses this year. Yeah. So the deficit was this year with the purchase of 4 buses, and then next year we'll also have a deficit, and we purchased those 2 buses. But it wasn't just purchasing the buses; it's just all-in expenses in the transportation fund. That is a part of it. We've seen increases in our contracts. And you can see that in the finance report when you look at Fund 40, that there's increases in our special ed transportation contracts, a little higher than typical. We also know that on the other side of that, it takes 2 years for that reimbursement to start to flow. So even when we have deficit spending in the transportation fund because we have an increase, and I'm going to specifically target an increase in the contract with our special ed, we'll see between 60 and 85% of that reimbursed to us. It takes 2 years for the state transportation reimbursement to start to flow through our district from the year that we experience it. So we'll submit a transportation reimbursement claim for school year 24, and we'll start to get that money back into the district through our transportation reimbursement in FY '26. So we do see a deficit, but we'll start to see an uptick as we go forward. When we purchase buses, we have a larger depreciation number because we're not leasing, we purchased. So we depreciate over 5 years with a bigger ticket item than a lease cost. We'll also see that money starting to come in. So the purchase for the buses from this year we'll see in 26. The purchase for the buses from next year we'll see in 27. And then at that point, 26, we'll start to see an uptick in our transportation fund.
So does the depreciation hit the transportation fund?
For sure. The transportation fund is the fund that we do the majority of our depreciation for reimbursement. On our financial statements that our auditors do every year, we do have depreciation on our buildings and all of our capital expenditures. But as far as what we get back from the state, the depreciation in the transportation fund is key to our transportation reimbursement that flows back to the district. Depreciation, for sure. We can depreciate buses over 5 years. We depreciate buildings. The bus barn is still depreciable 20 years. The repair that we're going to do to the parking lot is a repair, so that's depreciable over 3 years. So our radios and radio tower that we put in last year are also a 20-year depreciation schedule, so it depends on what you've purchased. Yellow school buses are 5 years.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Eric, I have a question. So I appreciate all of the time that you spent Monday going over the questions. It was a long meeting, and I know that some folks were not pleased with how long it ran. And while I wasn't able to ask a lot of my questions, I appreciated that Mrs. McMillan did take the time to ask a lot of questions, but those questions were very helpful. And I say that because being new, whether you're new or not, this is a lot of information. We had a lot of information to listen to on Monday. I have asked before that we have more meetings. Just before the newest members were seated, it was decided to move the meetings to 4 times a year. I have asked numerous times that we consider having an additional meeting or two, keep the meetings as they were previous to us just being seated, and cancel them if we don't need them. The 3-hour meeting, while unfortunate, and I really am sorry you had to drive that far that late at night, could have been prevented if we would have spread the meetings out. You make yourself available for questions, and I appreciate that as well. But oftentimes, some of the members are critical of us taking your time outside of an open meeting, that we're getting additional information that they may not have, that you don't have that many cycles to meet with us individually. So I again am asking that consideration be given to have additional meetings. I love that we have long-serving board members that really understand this better than the newer folks. But please give some professional courtesy to those of us that may not have that. I don't have a mentor, a board member mentor like one of the newer board members does. I have to rely on Dr. Shaw. And when I do that, folks are critical of that. So what other avenue do I have? So I would ask again, and I'll leave it at that we spread out the information that's being presented to us so we have more time to ask questions in the open, and that the public, if they choose to come to the meetings, can hear that as well. Thank you.
Eric, I'd like to add something to that. So just to kind of put it into perspective for everybody, rolling along for Ms. Rydell established the Finance Committee meeting. And then right before, in 2023, the Finance Committee decided that we would consolidate those meetings into 4 meetings instead of 10. The result is, on an annual basis, the board is reviewing financial topics in that meeting in depth. That's the purpose of the committee. And so instead of having one topic over, each month for 10 months, we're cramming multiple topics into 4 meetings. And what happened on Monday was the board was presented with the amended budget that we're voting on today, and we saw it for the first time 2 days ago in that meeting. The transportation review, which we just were talking about a potential, deficit situation, we reviewed very quickly at the end of the meeting on Monday and did not really get any kind of in-depth. I asked a lot of questions, but it probably surprises nobody that I didn't ask half of the questions that I wanted to ask. So the point is there just seems to be not enough time. And to Julie's point, I feel in a similar situation that it's hard to keep up with. It's hard to understand, and our time is so limited. And now we're trying to cram to accomplish more things in less meetings on top of that.
Thank you. And so this is a calendar. Again, the green is highlighted because those were the two dates that we said were more set in stone. Like we have an internal deadline to try and get comments to Mr. Bush and myself for section 2. If you could get those into us, we'll compile them and then we'll discuss them in the June meeting. These are all grouped together and taken in this way according to how the IASB recommends that we handle it. If you scroll down a little bit, Lincoln, thank you. This is the way, the questions, how we're going to try and tackle the review by section. So the goal is to have the information that's compiled for the sections put onto a shared drive. And so the board can easily find data that can support what changes were put in place, when they were put in place. I have an enormous spreadsheet because I have an affinity for Excel that is tracking the history, what changes were put in place, when they were put in place, et cetera, et cetera. And these are the questions. The top part is Dr. Cohen will be sharing information that will help with the review, and he'll put information in the shared drive for the board to consider and support any changes that may need to be made. And then the board is going to be trying to answer these questions if there are any changes that are outside of the press changes. So press changes, if they come up, will be addressed at any time, especially if they're time sensitive. So that was the main goals of the meeting. So the next one again in person will be in June, and we'll discuss any changes that we might be considering in that June meeting. For then it would come to the next board meeting. If there are any changes, it would be an informational item, like a first read, and then we would have an action item on the following meeting. So please let me know if you have any questions. Send me any comments, suggestions. Happy to compile those and share them with everyone. Thank you.
Just a reminder to everybody listening is these board committees are open meetings. So the public is welcome to, or staff is welcome to join and observe. And the second thing is, Ms. Zielinski, can we speak to the special ed review that mishap on the finance committee, just to make sure that everybody knows when that will be happening for next year?
Yeah, that was my fault. I'm sorry, I had a wrong calendar attached to the March Finance Committee meeting. When we had the special ed in last year, we moved it from May to September, and then that calendar had it still set in May. So when the March Finance Committee agenda was out, it was a PDF of the old calendar, so it did show that special ed was coming in May, and it had been moved to September. So for 24-25, it has been moved to May of 25. Yep. Okay.
Okay, Dr. Cohen, you're up.
All right, I'd like to start by recognizing our 5 retirees with a combined 121 years of service to the district. We're going to miss them tremendously. In 2nd grade, Sherry DeSalvo. In 3rd grade, Kim Ruth. Our admin assistant at Student Services, Luann Lotus. Our very own administrative assistant to the superintendent and board secretary, Kathy Height. And yes, woo is right. And Marina Navratil, who's been serving in a dual capacity as both bus driver and food service for almost 28 years. That's a lot of hours every day, getting here at 6:15 in the morning and not leaving here until after 4 in the evening. just 5 wonderful, wonderful women that I've really enjoyed working with and getting to know, and we're going to be missed deeply. I also want to thank Mr. Kroll, who's seated in the audience tonight. Joe was the superintendent for the day a couple weeks back. Congratulations. And Joe was instrumental in getting feedback from his 4th grade peers and working with our architects to help design the layout of the new play area for Mokena Intermediate School. So congratulations to you, sir. You get to see the fruits of your labor next fall when you come back to school. Thank you so much. As Mrs. Sullivan referred to earlier, our preliminary IR scores were accessible starting on Monday. I'd like to share some good news with you. I'd like to start with mathematics. For the years prior up to now, you'll notice spring 2020, there were no assessments given that year. But in the spring of 2019, we saw an increase in the 40% range for our math scores. That number fell slightly after the pandemic, but since then it rebounded to a new high in 22, a new high in 23, and now a new high again in 2024. These are the percentage of students who are meeting or exceeding state standards as level 4 or 5 on IAR. In 21, we had only one grade level where the percentage of students who met or exceeded was over 50%. In 22, that was 3 of the 6 grade levels. Last year, 4 of the 6 grade levels. This year, 5 of the 6 grade levels. And next year, the goal would be, of course, all 6. But it's been just a phenomenal. I mean, the Eureka Math curriculum took some getting used to, but now everybody's kind of working through the system, and it's really to see this kind of steady growth as a district and continuing to get better. It's just impressive to me after the pandemic when so many districts are still lamenting the loss of math skills and are having trouble closing that gap, and we continue to get better. So kudos to our math teachers. And then let's roll up to ELA. I can't even begin to tell you how proud I am of our teachers for having over 60% of our students meet state standards in ELA. We went from 2 years from 41% to 63%. That is literally to increasing the number of students who met state standards by 50% in 2 years. I can tell you that every building, in addition to the work we've done with ELA curriculum, now this is the first year for the K-5 curriculum, and we were only piloting in the junior high, but this is all the work that's being done through the school improvement plans, courtesy of our building leadership teams, the leadership of our principals, the leadership of Dr. Johnson. That 63% puts us among some of the top school districts in the state. I'd like to point out the cohort in the bottom right-hand corner, 8th graders, 82% of those students meeting or exceeding state standards. I'd like you to look 2 years prior when those students were in 6th grade. Only 23% of those students met or exceeded state standards 2 years ago. You hate to sound like a nerd and say I can't wait for a school report card to come out in October, but I cannot wait for this to drop because there's just a lot to be celebrated. We still have to get statewide data. We don't have demographic data yet. This is raw and it's preliminary, but it is just fantastic. I'm so proud of the work of our students and guided by the support of our teachers. Finally, the parent-student handbook was included in my report as an attachment. I know I've received some feedback already. Our nurses let me know that I missed an update with regards to head lice. Exciting stuff. Julie sent me some comments. But if there are any comments on the handbook, please make sure to get those to me. If there's any discussion right now, I'd be willing to entertain it.
Any questions, Dr. Cohen?
That concludes my report. Unless there's anything.
I don't have it.
Not on that, I just wanted to say thank you again for all the.
I do have just one thing. On the playground, the last day of play. So the turnout for that looked phenomenal. I'm sorry I missed it. I know the ice cream line was, hours long, which probably, I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but what can we do with that wood? Is there a way that we could repurpose that wood? I was thinking gardens, club or something, but what can we do?
We're going to be taking as much of it down as we can. I know, Terry, did you talk to Dave today? Last I talked to him was Monday. We're waiting for fencing to go up around around the playground. That will be officially, the playground will be inaccessible once that happens. And once we get the fencing around, we can start to remove pieces off of it. I was asked about the chimes out there, the bells. There's a full octave scale bells out there. There's the Hershey's Kiss and the gumdrop spires at the top of the towers. There's the sign that says Fort. And so Dave and I have started preliminary discussion about getting pieces off, and we'll have our summer helpers helping with that before we start getting heavy equipment in after Memorial Day. While I have yet to actually formally discuss this with the PTA and the foundation, my first thought was to give those pieces to the PTA and foundation and allow them to include those as raffle items in the fall fling, because I had a number of people inquire and have people bid on those things. The money will go right back to the PTA and back to our kids. So we are going to try and salvage as many pieces as possible. There's a lot of, all the decking is synthetic and some of it is warped. So that stuff is really kind of useless. And the posts themselves, we don't want to use, but some of the 2x6s are be in decent shape. We'll salvage as much as we can.
Do you think that they have those, like a stamp that you can burn into like wood or something? Do you think that people would be interested in having like a memento, like in their, on their mantle or something like, Mokena Park, where we could sell like $10 and do something?
I've seen that
fun
done with
that?
like gym floors and bleachers and things like that. Yeah, we'll see how much we can salvage, and we'll find somewhere to store it, and then we'll go from there and kind of make some plans. It has been once we start getting pieces off, we'll see how they come off. I mean, if they come off in chunks and start falling apart, then we may not have much to do with it.
Here's a sliver.
Yeah. So
There's a lot of slivers out
there are a lot of slivers available if you're still looking, if you're interested.
Okay, all right. Next up is Dr. Johnson.
All right, good evening. For my report this month, I provided my monthly update on the professional development that took place or will take place throughout the district during the month of May. I provided an update regarding the district MTSS committee and the work that was done within each of the buildings over the past couple of weeks of putting together a 3-year implementation plan for each school, specifically to how they want to work towards implementing our district guidebook that we've put together. I provided an update for the board regarding 4th grade math and the 4th grade math teacher's decision to move forward with Eureka Math Squared, which is the updated version of Eureka that our 5th through 8th grade teachers are currently implementing. And I also provided a little blurb for you regarding our consolidated district plan that is on the agenda this evening as an action item. Just as a reminder, the consolidated district plan is kind of the kickoff to the grant cycle process that districts go through for the title grants as well as the IDEA grants for special education. This is where stakeholders and teachers and administrators come together to talk about needs as it relates to the specific grants, as well as the review of school improvement plans, district goals that we have for next school year, as well as the professional development that might be needed to accomplish those goals. And so taking all of those pieces into consideration, we provide a high-level summary for the Illinois State Board of Education of what we plan to do with those grant funds. And once that is approved by you this evening, that then gives the green light to myself and Mrs. Volpe to start working on actually building out the grants with the specific actions and the dollar value assigned to those so that we can write those grants and get those submitted so that they're available to us for the July 1 fiscal year start. So that's just a little reminder of where this kind of goes. This kind of kicks off that grant cycle process for us for next school year. I do also just want to say congratulations to our staff and our students and our administrators as well for the preliminary IAR data. It's just so exciting to see that all of the hard work, and I know it's been tough this year with implementing a new curriculum and piloting new curriculum, but it's just so good to see that the hard work of everyone truly has come to fruition, and we're continuing to see progress. We still have room to grow for sure, but we're seeing progress and we're seeing growth and we're seeing gains being made across the district. And I cannot say just how proud I am of everyone for that. So I want to say thank you, to our teachers for continuing to be there for each other, push each other, say we can do this, we know we can, and really do what's best for students. Thank you to our administrators for continuing to lead your buildings with your school improvement plan. And I know, Dr. Cohen, you thanked everyone else, but I do want to say thank you to you as well, because without your continued support and your continued focus on our goals, it wouldn't be possible without your leadership as well. Any questions?
I had, I wanted to thank you again. If the numbers are great, but also the how you roll this out. I really enjoyed last month's meeting where the teachers themselves showed such excitement with the new curriculum. So your leadership in this curriculum rollout, I mean, it just really is phenomenal. So I really appreciate that. The question I have is, can the Northwestern not phone calls, the Zoom meetings went? I was able to only get on to one, but is there any feedback that you can share about how that went?
I have not touched base specifically with the community focus group session of that. I was not in attendance of those. Our Northwestern consultant was the one who was facilitating that. I do know from the survey perspective, because I had touched base with her prior to that just to make sure she had what she needed to drive the focus group questions, and she did say we had a good result from the survey that was provided. I know we had good from the feedback I've gotten from teachers too. They've attended attendance for the teacher focus groups that were conducted in each building as well. But I do not have the specific numbers for you for the parent or community feedback session. Yeah.
Dr. Johnson, thank you for your report. I echo what Julie says, and also I want to just point out I really like the professional learning updates that you give. That's useful, and I know that that's been a point of focus for all schools, and I think that's great, and I like the updates on that. I did want to just clarify something. I had submitted some feedback on this consolidated district plan, and I just want to kind of understand what our timing process is, because it was my impression that anything that is submitted for board approval the month before it is supposed to be approved, we would get an information item that we could review that material, and we would have 30 days, kind of that month period to submit our questions on it. And, the point that I was trying to make was we had, and this is similar to what, with the amended budget, these things are on our docket to have a board action today, but we had not, been provided some of this information last month. So, I know you said that this is consistent with how you've done it for years. So I'm kind of trying to understand as far as expectations on the board procedural and process. Is it, do we get things a month in advance, or is there some stuff that we just normally?
Well, the desire has always been that you get a month. There are things that come up, that just come up that have to get done. So the desire is yes. We always, ever since I've been on the board for 7 years, I can't speak for 11 years like Jim and Anna can, but yeah, that's always been the goal. But sometimes things happen and things come up and you don't have that opportunity to have those extra 30 days, but that would be the desired goal. But it's,
and I can speak to my understanding as well, and maybe it's just a misunderstanding on my part. But my understanding was if it was something that was routine in nature, that didn't have significant change from year to year, that I would be able to present that at that month's board meeting as long as I provided some sort of explanation of what may be different from what that has looked like in the past. And so if that's no longer the direction, I definitely can make that change.
A quick question. When does the consolidated district plan open?
I don't know off the top of my head, to be honest. It opens early spring. And then we work on it quite heavily because it is a pretty robust, as you saw, it's like 95 pages. But that's including the answers that were there from last year so that district people who are working on it as well as the board can see the difference from last year versus this year. So it does open, I believe, early spring, but I could give you an exact date. And then we do a lot of work together on completing that. It does take quite a bit of time. And in addition, I do have to talk with all of the private schools, either within Mokena boundaries or that have students from the Mokena boundaries attending them to see if they may qualify for any of the funds, the proportionate share funds of those title grants as well. So the process does take a long time, to complete.
Yeah, I've just questioned the feasibility of having it available in March for a first look. I don't know that that's, I'm sorry, April, sorry. Because if sometimes those grant amounts are populated, we're given, and then they're given to us and we have to, just as Dr. Johnson said, get to work. It is a pretty big undertaking.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something we can look at for next year.
I think this is a great conversation though, because, things that are routine to you are new to us, and it just seems like a very tight window for us to gain an understanding and be in a, informed, knowledgeable position to be able to vote on it quickly. So anything we can do to try to get that to us would be great.
Did you have any questions on it based on the information you did have that I can answer for you this evening?
Well, I submitted it now, and I think, Dr. Cohen, I think that maybe, because I submitted an email, questions via email, and then I think he said that you were out of the office, and so you would just
I saw
respond.
questions specific to the e-learning plan.
It was the consolidated district plan too.
Okay.
Both of them.
Okay.
You didn't
I saw
see
the
question?
e-learning questions,
Oh.
and that's why I was out of the office yesterday attending professional development and
Oh.
knowing that it wasn't on tonight's agenda. I asked if it would be okay to answer that, but I don't know.
So I did submit questions
Sure.
on the consolidated district plan.
Okay.
I don't remember what they were. I think it was minor stuff, but there was things like the superintendent coffee that I don't think we're having. Are we?
We had those in the fall. Those are.
Is this for next year or is this for in the past?
This is things we have done or plan to do. So it depends on the question. I'd have to look specifically at the question that you pulled it off of. And I do want to make sure too, there's 2 boxes on there for most of the questions. The first box is our response for this year's consolidated plan moving into next year. And then the second box, I believe it's like a yellow color, is what was there from the year prior, a response from the year prior. So I'd have to look specifically at the question to be able to answer it accurately.
Yeah, so there was a question about family workshops, open house and curriculum nights. Open house and curriculum nights are generally at the beginning of the year. The Wax Museum, that's done here. The superintendent coffees we did at all 3 buildings this year. It's intention to keep doing that. And then the reference to the level 3 autism classroom, which Dr. Volpe is going to talk about here shortly. So if I missed that, I apologize.
What question it is, I can pull it up and tell you.
No, I think we just ran through it.
Okay.
So can you just real quick, just give a recap of, or an update for the public, just to remind them over the e-learning plan process and when, the hearing was postponed. And so how are they to provide feedback? Do they?
With the hearing, there's the opportunity for written feedback. They could submit it to me, or the board secretary, Kathy Height, could receive that as well. Or there's oral testimony that's available on that day as well.
Yep.
Okay, moving on to Director of Student Services, Ms. Yes.
Summary of that will address some of the questions and comments from on the board. And to give you more we've made some progress in terms of so in my report on May 10th, I indicated that our director and our services coordinators met with me and made sure the survey of all of our learning started today. We begin developing visual plans for staffing and for the autism programming and we also will be working on a framework for developing the student services department plan of work consistent with the current goals. And that will also include
Two? Okay, that will also include some of my recommendations that I indicated that I would make upon my departure. As Dr. Johnson indicated, we've been working on the district consolidated plan. Changes from last year regarding my components include the following additions, which would be additional funding for autism programming. Changes to IDEA preschool include food services for therapeutic snack and additional contracted 0.4 FTE speech pathologist for the upcoming school year. In addition, I have been working on the IDEA consolidated grants, which can't be submitted until the consolidated plan is completed. However, there will be quite a bit of reallocating of funds from previous grant years. So I just received the initial allocation for the IDEA flow-through grants, and that amount is $428,373, and then an additional $20,452 for the preschool grants. So these are preliminary allocations that are based on the initial allocations from last year. Typically, we don't receive final allocations until ISB's final budget is completed, and that's typically in the fall. We generally are notified in October what additional funding, if any, that we will be receiving for that grant, and then if there's any rollover funding from the previous grant year. Actually, this afternoon, I conducted the annual Timely and Meaningful consultation meeting. That is a requirement by the Illinois State Board of Education to be completed every year by May 30th. The purpose of that meeting is to discuss with private parochial administrators, parents who send their children to private parochial schools, as well as parents who homeschool their children, so that they are aware of child find procedures, evaluation procedures, the amount of funding that we receive for proportionate share, as well as then that collaboration between District 159 and the administrators of the one parochial school that we have in Mokena to determine how those funds will be utilized for the upcoming school year. And we completed that this afternoon, and there's no real changes in terms of the way that we plan to use those funds. Typically, students that receive proportionate share services are significantly reduced from what that student would receive if they were enrolled in a public school district. So
Some of the parents we had attending today were new and had never been to any of these meetings, so it was very informational for them. There is a preventative and proactive student behavior supports program through the Illinois State Board of Education and ISU that really focuses on providing mandated trainings on crisis de-escalation, restorative practices, identifying signs of distress during physical restraint and timeout, trauma-informed practices, and behavior management practices. So this grant-funded collaboration between ISB and ISU offers training and technical assistance to districts to improve their response to how we deal with restraint and timeout. So while we are committed to providing safe and supportive and learning environments for all students, we're always looking for new ways to effectively support students within our buildings who may present with behaviors that impact our teaching and learning process. So we attended, myself and all of the building administrators attended a SIBS summit in Bolingbrook a few weeks ago and learned about the regulations and the resources available as well as just learning on our part. So we will be providing our staff through a coordinated professional development plan with these online modules over the course of the next school year so that they are familiar with the requirements, not only for how we need to report it to the state, but also to parents, and then ways that we can actually reduce the use of those interventions. I also provided you information on our staffing update. So during the first week of May, we held interviews for the open speech and language pathologist positions. We have identified 2 candidates for approval by the board within the next month. So we will be going from a total speech and language pathologist FTE to 5.8, which is an increase of 0.4. And that is reflective of the increase that we will need for the autism programming. We also chose a candidate. This is Chorley and her team. Chose a candidate for the new social worker position at MES. That position will be integral in supporting our preschool, early childhood, parent educator program that we'll be developing for the Preschool for All and the early childhood programs, as well as supporting our brand new kindergartners coming in who have presented us with challenges in the last several years. Again, I think, some of the research indicates that not only do we have communication needs to address with our students since the pandemic, but we also have definite behavioral and social emotional needs that need to be addressed. So speaking to that, a new BCBA job description was developed and presented to the board that will replace a current behavior specialist position that we contract for to the tune of $75,000 annually. That BCBA position will also be supporting the new autism programming that is an integral component of that program. Currently, as I said, the behavior specialist position is fully funded by the IDEA grant. Plans are to continue that. The special education program coordinator and curriculum specialist job description was developed and presented to the board also on April 26th. That position will not only oversee, manage, and implement the new program classroom, but in general, improve programming for students on the autism spectrum and other students with developmental delays and similar needs across the district, not just in that classroom. Because we do have students with those learning needs that are not necessarily just in that classroom or in that program, but they're in the specialized instruction, instructional, and resource and general education settings. And we need to improve our services across the board. As I said, due to the new program we are developing at Mokena Elementary, we will be increasing SLP services by 0.4 FTE. That will enable us to have that speech and language pathologist pushing into the classrooms for early childhood and for the K-2 program for a significant amount of time, 4 days a week for half days. So it really is a co-teaching opportunity because the needs of these students are so significant in terms of communication. That's what's required because for the most part they're nonverbal or use AAC devices. So those are like augmentative communication devices. We will be scheduling interviews for an occupational therapist position that is open. Right now we have all contract staff. We have one of our staff significantly cutting her hours, and we will be increasing by a half a day for the autism program for next year. And we will continue to monitor the K-1 special education enrollment numbers through the summer and fall, and that's more of that resource instructional level. As you know, in special education, it's a moving target. We have new kids moving in, we have kindergartners coming in, so that's going to be a place that we continue to monitor very closely. And as well, while we are in the final stages of determining assignments for all teachers and related services in the department for the upcoming school year, we will continue to monitor all related services because services that are placed in the IEP are required by law and need to be met. So at the end of my report, I shared with you that this is the first year that Mokena District hosted a Best Buddies chapter at MIS. And that is a worldwide organization with a mission to shape a more inclusive community, especially for individuals with intellectual disabilities and developmental disabilities. So our group of students at MIS is comprised of about 22 students who meet twice a month to learn about inclusion and how we can make our school a more inclusive environment. They participated in the Will County Best Buddies Friendship Walk at Lincoln Way East this year, and our chapter received first place. So that was an amazing, amazing feat for them. Special thanks to Mallory and Sierra and Danielle for all of their hard work and dedication, and we look forward to continuing that in the future. So, and we also placed 22nd out of 25 total teams that were across a larger area. So we were very proud of them. All right, now I'm going to speak specifically to the special education programming update section that I have already provided for you and information that I'm presenting in the next report, but is timely for our conversation today. So we've previously discussed the trend regarding the increase of number of students on the autism spectrum and other students with significant developmental delays, cognitive delays in communication, behavior, and social emotional functioning, motor development, and life skills. So while we started looking at the numbers and planning in January and having initial conversations with our cooperative, those conversations continued, and it became clear that we really had only three options, right? The first option would be to try to open our own program. The second option for these group of students would be to continue speaking with parents to recommend placements for Pioneer Grove at the AIM program, several of which have indicated that they do not want their children sent to a school that has no opportunities for inclusion because that program is in a building that is completely self-contained, all students with significant disabilities. And one of the other challenges becomes when those classrooms are full, then we have to look at a therapeutic day school, which on average is anywhere from $40,000 to $60,000 per student per year. And they also fill up. It really does seem like since the pandemic, typically we would be seeing these therapeutic day schools fill up by like February of a school year. It's been much sooner. This year they were filled by October, November. And so really, there aren't many options, and really we don't have the ability to say, well, we're just not going to provide the programming, right? It's not like a dual language program or a gifted program or a summer program. This is required by law. We are required to offer a continuum of services for students with disabilities, and that is something that this program will help us continue to expand upon, and it will really meet the criteria and the spirit of IDEA, which is the federal law requiring that we educate students with disabilities in the least restrictive environment, right? So we have to meet all of their learning needs, but the goal is to do it, if at all possible, so that they continue either their home school or their home district and have opportunities for inclusion, to spend at least some of the portion of the day with their same age peers. So, after speaking further with the administration at the co-op and realizing that they thought they maybe could provide some of this programming here at MES, but there were some caveats and some things that really had to happen if they were going to even be able to do that, in collaboration with Dr. Cohen, Megan Munt, Rachel Truly, and I decided that given the situation that we're in and knowing that numbers are not going to decrease but rather increase, we're excited to announce that we are going to be opening a program of our own to expand our continuum of special education programs and services for these students. When I did a cost analysis to look at what it would cost to create our own program versus what it costs to send students to more restrictive placements, whether that be at the special education cooperative or whether that be at a therapeutic day school such as Guiding Light or Giant Steps or Little Friends. It is a cost-neutral way to better service our students, and I have very specific numbers that I will share with the board this evening. And so the plan is to open one classroom for the 24-25 school year, and that's going to service no more than 7 students. We're capping that program so that we can stay true to the model and the teaching methodologies that are evidence-based for supporting these students. Expansion plans for following years will be developed next school year. Again, when we look at the number of students that are either in younger grades coming up, such as preschool, or older grades, there are several students, as we were looking at rosters, there are several students that currently really have the characteristics that could be served by this program, but we can't service that. So these students aren't going away. It would just be really expanding that. But again, that's an option that the new director can look at next year. At a minimum, this group of K2 students are going to need, this program is going to need to age up with them. And as I said earlier, this project is not just to work on this classroom, but it really truly is to ensure that we build capacity across not only our teachers, but our administrators and all of our related services staff to be able to provide research-based and evidence-based teaching methodologies and supports for these students. So one thing that was very exciting as we were planning all of this, when we went to the summit, for the SIB summit, for the behavior and and timeout training, we were notified that we are eligible to receive support in free training, technical assistance, on-site coaching from the Autism Professional Learning and Universal Supports Project, which is, again, a grant project supported by the Illinois State Board of Education and Illinois State University. So we met with them briefly on that day. Since that time, and this was April, I think it was April 18th, I've had phone conversations with the program director, and they came out and met with our team on May 10th for the first time so that we could learn more about this support that they will provide us for the next minimum of 3 years. Their funding runs out a few years from now, but they're hoping that it will continue. I believe that with 3 years of support from this grant project that we will absolutely be successful in this programming. And so I did include a link for board members to look up more information about this program. So we met with the program director and 2 of the team members, and they toured classrooms and met staff last Friday. They are coming back this coming Wednesday and Friday to administer the APERS, which is the Autism Program Environment Rating Scale, which is an evidence-based tool developed by the National Professional Development Center on Autism Spectrum Disorder at UNC. And they have a long history of providing excellent research and support for districts in that programming area. The APERS program evaluation will include a records review of student IEPs. It'll include observations in classrooms of up to 5 hours, as well as staff and parent interviews. So those will be done on May 15th and 17th, and at the conclusion of that, we will be provided with information about what are our strengths in the areas of autism programming and what are our areas for growth. A part of this process is identifying a multidisciplinary district behavior change team that will be trained, and they will be what they call the knowledge keepers of this new learning and information, and they will be the drivers of building capacity to include program development, implementation, and evaluation of research and evidence-based programming for autism across the district. This team includes a teacher, 2 psychologists, speech pathologists, a social worker, and district administrators. They all will have to go through a 40-hour modules for having a foundation and understanding of working with these students, and they will complete, it's 14 hours, and they will complete that prior to a week-long workshop series that we've been invited to attend on June 3rd through 7th. So we'll use the information from that APERS assessment as well as all of the information that they learn at this experiential week-long summit, and we will develop a plan of action in collaboration with the A+ program staff for implementation for this upcoming year. So again, the plan will focus on early childhood, kindergarten through 2nd grade development of the new STARS program, as well as in the future then across other environments where these students are learning, as well as other grade levels. The plan is that the A+ team will include on-site training and coaching as well for our Preschool for All team, so that we can offer more inclusive opportunities for our early learners. They have a team member who specializes in preschool, so they will help us build the capacity of our preschool staff to implement socialization and behavior strategies with that goal to increase opportunities for inclusion. And we are also going to be a pilot district for the state this fall. The Autism Project is rolling out online modules that will prepare staff to become registered behavior technicians. So we are were asked and offered to be pilots, so that will be free training that our staff, any staff can take. But we are really hoping that our paraprofessionals in that program and others that are servicing our kids with these learning needs across the district in other environments will also take advantage of that training. Any questions so far? Sorry, I know I'm talking a lot. Well, so that's the other piece that I wanted to share with you. You don't know my background, right? And so I hear the questioning and people being a bit afraid of this moving too fast and not being prepared. But I have an extensive background in teaching students on the autism spectrum, and I've had a lot of training in my, well, let's just say many years. I was a member of the instructional support team for one of the largest special ed cooperatives in this state, serving DuPage County. We had 18 school districts. Through that position, I taught master's level courses on teaching methods for students on the autism spectrum. I was the first project manager for the co-op, responsible for leading the development of new programs, such as the one that we're opening in our member districts. I provided consultation, training, and technical assistance and on-site coaching for teams, teaching students in these programs in member districts, as well as our programs for these students at the cooperative level. As an executive director at a school in the south suburbs, I created a program such as the one that we're opening, and as the executive director of one of the largest school districts in this state, I had over 2,500 students with IEPs across preschool through 22 in over 21 buildings. And I was responsible for evaluating, improving those programs and expanding on the capacity of our district to program for these students. So I have a lot of experience in this area because I've done it several times, and I don't take this lightly. Would I have loved to have had a year to plan this? Absolutely. Do we have a year to plan this? Absolutely not. And I am committed to make this successful. So, in addition to our partnership with the A+ program, grant program, we have a group of staff that are visiting the Excel Autism Public School program at Cherry Hill School in New Lenox. They have had a program very similar to what we will be opening up and running for years. And I thought it might be helpful for some of our staff who haven't seen that to kind of see what it looks like and have an opportunity to speak with staff and administrators to see how those programs are structured as well. And then we will continue our planning over the summer with our team and be ready to open that classroom on the first day of school. Any questions?
No, but I'll be the first to admit, yes, I was a little nervous, but when Dr. Cohen brought you aboard, he told us your extensive background and reading this, and now hearing you, I'm super excited for this, and I thank you for all the hard work you in such a short time you've done. Appreciate it so much. Thank you.
And I have to just say, doing this without Rachel would not be possible. So, I mean, between Megan and Rachel and I, and with support, of Dr. Cohen and the board, we will make this successful.
I know you guys will. And I think you guys are really fantastic.
Thank you.
Questions? I know I have some questions, but first.
Whatever you want. I will be brief. And I will say I have a tremendous amount of questions, and only because I know that parents will have a tremendous amount of questions, and from how students will be selected, how far down the road are we, more information about the goals of the program, I have a lot of questions. It has nothing to do with support of what you're doing. As far as the budget goes, having the numbers to have the, to do the analysis of starting the program versus utilizing Prairie Grove or another cooperative or anything, that would help me. I just have a lot of questions about numbers, caseload for our OTs and our speech path folks. I would really, so this is my long way of saying I would highly recommend that we support a special meeting so parents can hear some of this and have a better understanding. Now, whether you're contacting them individually or not,
That is a team decision that is made by an IEP team. And the parents of the students that would be recommended for this by the IEP team have been given extensive information. And they are very excited and on board.
So, I know that you would prefer to have a year to develop a plan. I was a little caught off guard when we spoke last month, because I actually asked specifically about the time sensitivity of the issue. So I was surprised at seeing that we're hiring and interviewing people for a coordinator for certain positions, and thankfully we have some staff on board. There's just a lot of questions. I continue to support the idea that we have a special needs advisory committee that includes parents, but I feel like we're moving at such a pace that that I really wish that we could have a special meeting to better understand this in depth. Again, I support what we are trying to do, and sometimes time is not on our side. But I for one was caught off guard on the time sensitivity, and numbers on how our number we moved to 843 I think in 2016. Just seeing the trend in our numbers, when we talk about expansion, what are we hoping to expand for? I'll stop with my, question after question after question, and I would just ask that you and the board give consideration to having a meeting that to these questions so everyone can have a comfort level. Because these are our kids that we want to support in the best way possible, and I love our staff, but I think it would give the parents a lot more comfort if we had that type of a meeting where we can understand the program better. So I appreciate it. Again,
I'm happy to meet with the board. But like I said, we've had very in-depth conversations with parents, students who will be served by this program. If we, I agree with you. This whole thing has come upon us so fast, but the reason why that happened is because the co-op isn't providing for us what we need. And I honestly don't know what to do with these 7 kids.
Well, the last thing I'll say is I've really enjoyed the expertise that you have brought. I enjoyed that your willingness to try and educate me on some of these issues, and I truly hope that you stay in some capacity to help make this successful.
Thanks.
I just want to follow up to one other thing. And, the cooperative Pioneer Grove is darn near full. As part of the advisory committee, with the local superintendents, I know that Sarah Ruxer, the director, has expressed a need for more space and the fact that they're kind of reaching a space limitation in their facility. And so that's one of the reasons why we initially asked them to help staff a classroom in our building. We wanted them to provide the staff here, not necessarily at Pioneer Grove. But they just, I wouldn't think it was an unwillingness to do so as much as it was they could not commit to doing so. And so at a certain point in time, a decision had to be made. And if we waited much longer, we would be in the position of having to start this even later. It's not a lot of runway now, and the longer we kind of kick that can down the road for making a decision, that runway just gets shorter and shorter. So I appreciate the willingness to put in the work. We're very fortunate to have a elementary school principal with a special education background as well. So it'll be nice to have these students at home in our building.
Okay, so I have a comment before I start asking some questions.
Absolutely.
I just want to thank you again. This came up very rapidly, very an issue, and as an interim director, the easy thing for you to do would have been to kick the can down the road.
Yeah.
And you didn't do that. So I applaud you. You took this on. Our parents in our district, to these students, should be grateful that you didn't kick the can down the road, and then these students would be out in limbo for a year. That's just not in their best interest. So thank you.
I'll be honest with you, and I appreciate that. I'll be honest with you. If I hadn't done this before, I probably would have kicked the can down the road because this involves a lot of work and a lot of preparation. But I am passionate about this. That was, one of my very first positions in special education was working in an early childhood program. This was over 30 years ago. And one of the, still to this day, probably highest quality programs. It was in an Indian Prairie school district. And so I kind of have that passion to begin with. But thank you.
Got it. So I do have a couple questions for you.
Yes.
Because I do think that, follow up on Ms. Quinlan's some comments. I do think that, this program needs to be set up correctly.
Yes.
We don't want to go after a year and say, oh, we're cutting the program, we hired all these people, and then go back to 843 or whatever. We need to make sure that this program is sustained and we can move forward with it. So my first question is, for the 24-25 school year, we'll have one classroom with 7 students.
Yes.
So what happens when the 8th student pops up in the district that we would have to service?
We already have them. I mean, we literally have more kids, like I was saying earlier, that we could meet their needs in this program. But we didn't feel it was prudent to open 2 classrooms because we want to start it slow and make it successful. That's the right way to do this, in my experience. And so there are still students that are currently at Pioneer Grove that are going to have to stay there. And there's kids that are placed out in therapeutic day placements. They're going to have to stay there. We just can't, it's not responsible to say, oh, we're going to open a program, let's bring them all back. That is the wrong way to do this. So, if the new director, as they start looking next year over the fall, late fall and into January, they start looking at the numbers at all these different grade level bands. And in my opinion, they're likely going to see that they're going to need to open another section. And then this cohort, this group, these are little ones. They're going to, and then that whole cohort's going to need to continue to move up. So that decision will be made next year. I don't see that this is not going to continue to be a need when you look at the research and the number of students on the autism spectrum, even 10 years ago, the incidence rate to now. And what we're really seeing is not only the number increase, but the level of severity in terms of the needs that these kids have, in terms of communication and cognitive skills and socialization skills. And they need special programming. And there is research to support it. And when it's put together and done right and staffed appropriately, it is very successful.
So that kind of leads into my next question.
Sure.
And maybe this is for Mrs. Torley. Sorry, more than yourself, since
we're in this together.
Well, you'll be leaving us in approximately 45 days ish. Here, I guess, but so I guess to your comment, trying to continue the sustainability. students, it sounds like we could probably have 2 or 3, maybe even 4 classrooms potentially based on students in the district. I know you're saying start slow and do it right, but it sounds like the population is out there. So I guess the question, Dr. Cohen, maybe even Stuart, is how a set classroom, to keep this program going, because it sounds like it's going to be a great program for our students. It's what we need. We have the population to support it. Do we have the facilities to support it if we can, get the staff and things like that?
Yes, we do. Gonna walk up the building just here and
Great.
a lot of space available.
Perfect.
We're very fortunate. Actually, I think I commented that, this district has the most space available, at least in this building, that I've ever experienced in any of the many districts that I've worked in or consulted in.
Well, that's good to hear, because in year 2 and maybe even year 3, if the space is here at this building, then that's key, because, we're going to have time, obviously, to figure out how to do year 4s, 5, and 6, where these students potentially are going to be MIS students, MJH. That's 5, 6, 7 years down the road potentially for a lot of these students. So who knows what the program's going to look like then. But it's good to know that we have the facilities here. We could continue that growth into subsequent years, at least year 2 and 3. And then that gives us time for the new director and
Right.
everybody else to figure out, okay, what, because I think, to Ms. Squinley's point, I mean, the important thing is to create something that's sustainable. We don't want something that is just going to, and it sounds like you've done your due diligence, start small,
Yes.
with 1 as opposed to 2 or 3, even though, there might be students that qualify for that. So, my final question then, do we have any contractual obligations to notify 843 that we are doing our own programs? Or bringing it in-house, or how does that affect their planning? Because I also want to be cognizant of.
Right. So we are required to let them know each spring whether we're not going to be using their services any longer. And I have made that communication. We are going to continue to using, their Pioneer Grow program and their Self program. So we've met our obligations to the co-op at this time. They are aware of what we're doing because we asked them to do it for us, and they weren't confident they could do it for us. They offered support in helping us do it, but their person that was going to help us do that's on maternity leave. It was just kind of one thing after another, and now that we have the support of this grant program, I mean, that's the best support we can hope for. So we're good.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody else. It sounds like a great program, and we're lucky to have the interim director with such a background in autism. Any other, Kelly?
Well, I'm sorry for the bad news, but I have a lot of questions.
No worries.
So, Ms. Volpe, you said that you have a financial projection for what this program will roll out to look like. Where are you presenting that now?
I will present that to the board. I mean, I can give you some very basic information without going through an entire financial training on how special education funding works. But I do have a cost analysis document for you. Let me pull it up here.
Can you project it or Lincoln
We
to
could.
project it? I mean, we don't have, or I don't know if it's.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Volpe.
Yeah.
The red microphone's not working, so if you can just go off to the side and go direct.
But I did Lincoln. It did work when you started it. Okay. Yeah. All right, Lincoln. While he is getting that up, I'll give you some background information. So the cooperative program, AIM, Self, and Stellar have tuition rates per month per student. The AIM classroom is anywhere between $2,600 per month per student enrolled. The Stellar classroom, which is the new classroom that they opened earlier this year in January, is $4,748.15 per month per student. And they charge us the full amount of tuition regardless of whether or not those students attend a half a day or not. In addition to that, they charge us $249.55 to $375 a week per student in addition for OT services. If that program doesn't have openings, or if the staff don't feel that they can meet the needs of those students, then we need to look at a private therapeutic day school. We currently have students with some of these needs at the following schools. Guiding Light is $410.72 per day per student at 176 days. That tuition is $72,287. Giant Steps, $384.98 is the daily rate per student. At 176 days, that is $67,756 per student. Little Friends is $46,000. The transportation costs along with the tuition is an additional cost. So for the Guiding Light bus route from here to, I think it's in Westmont, it's $375 per day per child. Guiding Light's bus route, the Giant Steps bus route is $305 per school day per child. And the Little Friends bus route is brand new, so I don't have that amount yet. We just placed a student there within the last few weeks. But that's all the way in Warrenville, so it's going to be similar. When we send our students to Pioneer Grove, they consider that a Tier 1 cost. That's only $121 per student per day. Now, our students, and this is for special transportation, our students that live in Mokena and would qualify for special transportation, which would likely be all of the students in this program, would still be charged that $121. So there really wouldn't be any difference in transportation costs, whether we sent a student to Pioneer Grove or whether that student came here for the program. One of the challenges that we've had this year is that the co-op was not able to find enough staff for busing. So we ended up having to privately contract for some of our students to go to these schools, and it's pretty costly. So if we house these kiddos and provide them with an opportunity to be in their home school and in their home district in the least restrictive environment, not only will we save money in these areas, but they will be getting a better education. All right, so now we talk about what are the anticipated expenses, okay? So we are not asking for an additional teacher to teach this class. When we looked at the staffing projections and plans for the students separate from the kids, the 7 kids in this kindergarten. It's a kindergarten 2 program, but really the only kids right now that we have slotted are K1. The needs of those other students really could be met with existing programs, so there's no additional funding required for a teacher for this classroom. We currently spend, again, $75,000 for a BCBA. That money comes completely out of the IDEA grant. So it's not local funds that fund that. So while we are allocating 4 FTE or 2 days a week of the BCBA for this program. The remaining 6 FTE is really something that we're already contracting for anyways, and we're paying a higher rate because it's a contracted person and they're not even a BCBA. They're behavior specialists. So I have already notified them that we will not be extending them that contract next year, that we will be hiring our own staff. Again, grant funded. The program coordinator, right now, when we look at the figures up here, under the cooperative program expenses, we are spending over $100,000 just on tuition to Pioneer Grove. So that money can be reallocated from what we're currently paying to the co-op to fund the autism program coordinator. Sorry. So that, yeah. And again, the tuition right now that we have included in the IDEA grant is $277,000. So $100,000 of it, $70,000 and then benefits would be reallocated from tuition that we will be saving by keeping these students in district and allocated to fund that program coordinator as well as the additional 0.4 FTE speech path. 40,000 is high, but I always like to figure high, right? When I budget, even for, my department or even my own personal finances, I like to always kind of pad those numbers just in case there's additional expenses. Right now, we have all contracted occupational therapists. Again, minimal addition of OT, just another half a day a week. And again, OT contract could be IDEA grant funded if we needed to. Paraprofessionals, currently the specialized instruction classroom that FTE from the teacher that we're taking and allocating to this classroom, that classroom has 3 paraprofessionals in it. So at this point, there would be no additional FTE. We are looking at obviously each individual student needs, but when you have a full-time teacher, 3 paraprofessionals that we're hoping are going to be highly trained in taking that RBT, those RBT modules, plus you have a speech pathologist pushing in, co-teaching, 4 days for half a day. You have the OT pushing in, you have the social worker pushing in. We are not anticipating at this point to need additional paraprofessionals, but again, just like I had said in my previous staffing report, we always need to monitor the needs of our students. But for now, no new teachers, no parapros. So when I say that it's cost neutral, it's cost neutral. There should not be any funds that will come out of local funds to pay for this, because I'm going to be reallocating money that is currently expended in other ways through the IDEA grant. For example, this last school year, we allocated through the IDEA grant $27,000 to Easter Seals to come in and provide coaching for 2 teachers on autism programming. And in the early childhood grant, or the preschool grant, $34,311. So right there is a significant amount of funding that can be reallocated to staff to support this program as well. We also had $4,922 allocated to a contract psychologist. We will not need that allocation next year because we have hired a 0.4 psychologist. And like I said, the $75,000, the contracted behavior specialist can be allocated for the BCBA. It was $15,000 for a contract certified school nurse. We are working with our new nurse that was hired at MJH this year to take the ISB courses to be able to do the work of the certified school nurse for special education evaluation, so that $15,000 will not need to be expended next year. Currently in the IDEA consolidated grants, K through 8, $15,000 for curricular materials are already included in that, as well as an additional $5,000 for the preschool or early childhood. So some of the funds that you see down here that we will require for materials and supplies for the new classroom are already included. Oh, yep, there you go. Yeah, already included in that grant. Questions?
Yes. So is it accurate to say that your IDEA grant, you're going to apply for more money as a result of this classroom, and that's why it's cost neutral? Is it, no, just reallocated.
The money that's allocated is allocated, and the way we spend it is really going to be changing considerably. Yeah, we're going to be reallocating funds that were used in certain ways to support these programs, as well as additional curriculum and instructional materials that we need across the district.
Okay, so with the, if you scroll up, I'm sorry, Lincoln, go to back to staff. So this autism program coordinator position, this is a new position?
Yes, and actually I'm going to change this because we have now voted, and it's called the STARS program.
Okay, so
Yes.
this is a new job description that's going to be, and this is not the teacher, there's a teacher above that, and then there's another
Yes.
coordinator position.
Yes.
Is that an administrator for the district, or what?
This is the same level of
The coordinator,
person as,
the person will be a supervisor, the person will be administrator, similar to the student services coordinator position that was also added back in.
So we're going to have the structure of the, I'm just going to back up a second here before I get back to the staffing. Ms. Moby, I really, I echo what has been said about your experience and your vast background and knowledge on the subject. My concern is, what other people do we have on staff? Mrs. Truly, I hate to put you on the spot. I'm looking at you because I think it was mentioned that you have experience. Have you ever implemented a new program at a school? Okay. And so do we have other staff on, currently employed that has experience implementing a new program similar to this besides Mrs. Truly?
That I do not know off the top of my head. I don't know everybody's backgrounds and their experiences. I know that we have people that worked in co-ops before, so they would have that experience. But that being said, I agree with everything Tessa said. I 100% agree with her. The thing is, these students are coming. We have to do something, and we are doing it the right way with the right support, and it's systematic, and it's thoughtful, and it's intentional with experts, and it's free. Like, we have fallen into something that I've never experienced before. So if we want to do it well, we have to do it right. And it's not so much the experience, because if there were people that had the experience and we threw it out there, who is interested in this? If you're interested in this, we would love to have you. And so it's not so much the experience, it's the needs of the students. So we have to meet their needs. And we have to do it well, because if we don't do it well, it's going to be a very challenging school year. And we're going to have exactly what happened at the beginning of the school year. And we can't do that again. We have to do what's best for kids.
And the great thing is that we actually have people applying for the open positions that have the experience
Yeah.
that we need as well.
Mm-hmm.
So between
Yes.
between having staff that we can train up to.
Mm-hmm.
I have my volume always up. I'm so sorry. I hate when that happens. I swear the volume is
Yeah, so between having staff that are willing and excited about this program, but also very encouraging that we've had people apply for the open positions that have the exact experience that we need, and they want to continue to learn. Like Mrs. Turley said, this whole situation really didn't happen the way one would hope. The way it's turning out is amazing. In terms of things just coming together.
So your contract is up on June 30th,
Yes.
and you're the one with the most knowledge and experience with regards to the program. And we know that you're not leaving in June. You're not leaving on June 30th. And we're going to pay you for your time beyond June 30th.
To get my TRS, I can't promise or commit to doing any work in the district. At least 30 days.
We've
Why?
had
After June 30th?
Ms. Volpe and I have had preliminary discussions
Yeah.
about how she can come back and help support Megan as this program rolls out. Additionally, we will be required to do some training next fall for all of our staff on restraint and timeout, for which Ms. Volpe is qualified to provide that training. We have not yet talked about scope. That will, what that support looks like. That will be a conversation that we'll have at a later date once we have some things nailed down. But Mrs. Volpe does have to separate from the school district. Of course, congratulations. We wish you well in your upcoming retirement. But we do not have that lockdown yet. what that looks like.
But there will be an additional cost here for your services next year.
So remember the Elevating Educators grant that I talked about earlier? Grant that
The 100,000. So that,
So that money has been reserved for retaining staff. That's what that grant was for, to provide support to retain staff. So providing professional development and coaching for administrators and staff so that we develop programs and procedures and services so that people want to stay here. That could be a potential source. And I have to tell you, this was not my decision. When somebody came to me and said, we really need to do this, we need to open our own program, I said, absolutely not. I am not doing this in 3 months. I could do it. I know what I'm doing, but I don't want to do this. And then when we started looking into the options, it became clear that we really didn't have a choice and that we can do this better than anybody else. And I left it up to Megan and Mrs. Turley, and I said, what do you guys want to do? Do we want to see if the co-op can help us do this or trust that they're going to, come through for us? It was a unanimous decision. And although the new director may not have, a lot of experience opening these programs, we're going to have the support of a team of people from a university and the State Board of Education to walk us through this. I mean, I don't have a concern. I opened programs with a lot less, and they were very successful. So I don't have concerns about that.
so the new student services director will be the one after your departure. She will be the one to kind of lead the way after
July 1.
that.
Yeah, and
July-
she was with
July
us
1st.
on the 10th when we sat and made all these plans, and she was with us. So, I mean, she's invested in this I have all the faith in the world that, I mean, she's a bright individual. She can do this. She has a sibling with these needs. So she'll be great.
Is it possible to do a back to Julie's point, like a special meeting or a workshop where we can invite staff and the community in to look at, typically I come from a world where, financial projections or scenarios are presented and they're folded into the existing budget and the existing, financials. And so you would show, this is where we're at now. This is what items are going to be hit with these changes, and this is how it rolls out. So, I understand that a lot of this is grant funded, but in reality, all of our grant money gets rolled into revenues. So, whether it comes from the taxpayer dollars directly or we say it's grant money, all revenues are just meshed together, right? And so, it does cost, even though we're getting a grant. It does cost.
But what I'm saying is it's cost neutral.
Right.
Because all of the money and the way that we're reallocating the funds that we have is no new money.
Except for potentially your scope of work after July.
Which there's...
Yeah, the Elevating Educators grant that she's referring to is a one-time grant, sort of the leftovers of the American Rescue Plan. It has to be encumbered next year. It's a use it or lose it type of opportunity. It's non-renewable. We had some discussions with our union leadership about how best to support our classrooms, especially those using that grant. But I think that using that money for training is the exact purpose of the grant. And so it dovetails nicely with launching this program to have those resources at our disposal. If we were to wait a year or two and try and do it, that resource would not be there to support it. Additionally, I'm very skeptical when it comes to the state of Illinois. If you haven't been reading the paper, the times of the federal government stimulus money are over. Here comes September 2024. And, there's been discussion about support for evidence-based funding increases in the future should the state, right now I think they're looking at an $800 million budget deficit. Basically all the things that have been requested do not add up to the revenues. So going forward, will the grant money be there to support the project through ISB and through the State Board of Ed or through Illinois State University? I don't know. I can't say that it's going to be there 2 or 3 years from now. Having these 7 kids, especially the ones that are pre-K coming up into kindergarten, it's kind of forced our hand into looking at this. The timing of having these resources available to us is very fortuitous, where we're basically able to get a lot of support without using even our own local grant funds, which could be allocated in other ways. Having the coaching from the state board and from Illinois State will be tremendous. That's something we paid a lot of money to Easter Seals for that we don't have to do anymore. Having the, especially on site. So we are at a bit of we're at a juncture right now where the opportunity to move ahead, the conditions won't be, well, the only condition that is probably working against us is time, but all of the other conditions are perfect. And so that's, it's, and again, I can, without going into each individual IEP meeting and talking with each parent, because those placement decisions are done individually for each student, I can tell you that any parent, if you ask them, would want to have their child in their home school if at all possible. And I know that was, when those discussions started, that was a big driver of the conversation, where we would be best serving in the least restrictive environment.
Okay, thank you. I want you to all know that I support this. Theoretically, I understand that it is more desirable to keep these kids in our school and have that kind of control over the classroom. it does seem fast. The board discussed this briefly in closed session last month, and it seemed to me that there was not going to be, I had no foresight into thinking that we would be in the position we are today. So that is concerning, but I understand. During our closed session, I'm going to go back now because I want to talk about just kind of staffing the student services. So in December, the board had approved the student services coordinator position conceptually. And the board was told that the position would be a Mokena Teachers Union job and the salary was going to be about $70,000. Is this the position that we have on the personnel report to hire? Is this the same position that we have on the personnel report to hire today for 95, or is this isn't the STARS coordinator position?
It is. No, it is not the STARS coordinator position. The position that you're talking about from December is the one that's on the personnel report.
So that was presented again conceptually to the board that it would be a teachers union job for about $70,000 salary. What has changed? What would the cost difference be? Obviously, there's a salary component of $25,000 difference, but what other costs are different having an administrator now in that position?
So we had discussions with the Mokena Teachers Association regarding that position. It was discussed whether or not that position would exist inside of their bargaining unit or outside of it, and we came to an agreement that it would be outside of the bargaining unit, that this person would have some supervisory responsibilities and therefore didn't necessarily fit in their preamble clause at the beginning of their contract that recognizes who is in and who is out in terms of the unit that they represent. As far as the salary goes, the candidate was internal. The candidate is already has a salary which is at or slightly above the amount that was estimated for that position. That was an estimate. The person is now working extra days in the summer, so factoring in what they would have received as an estimate of what they would have received as a raise had they not left the bargaining unit in their current position, in addition to the extra days that they're per diem. That number is the number we arrived at. So that is based on their current rate and compensating them for their additional time.
And they also look at the longer work day. That is an MTA contract.
Well, sometimes beyond, probably beyond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about the retirement and the benefits? There's a different package for administrators?
Not for this position, not for coordinators.
Not for coordinators.
Correct.
Okay. So that's kind of apples. That's kind of the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a contract and, is it typical that a contract administrator works 200 days a year, or is it normally a full year?
Depends. We have an assistant principal at MES that works 210. We have an assistant principal at the junior high that works the entire year because of the athletic responsibilities. We have a coordinator of transportation that works during the school year, but works, how many days is Irvin? He's 210. So the position depends on how much work is there for them to do in the summer. All central office is 260 day a year. And it also corresponds with even our office staff, our MCSA staff. We have some that work just the days schools are in session. We have some that work 200 days, to 10 before and 10 after. We have, I think it's 10 before, 10 after. We have some that work all 260. So it depends on the need for the position, how we write that job description.
So I'm going to tell you right now that I am not, I'm probably not, I have to think about it a little bit more, but I probably won't vote in favor today of approving that position. And I just want to kind of explain while we're on the topic why. Because I feel like we need to look at the student services staffing kind of in a bigger picture and understand. And the example here is that we're projecting, to hire another coordinator at 70,000. If we thought we were hiring this coordinator at 70,000, now we're hiring him at 95, and then this person comes in at, 90 or 80, then it's just like, we already had an amended for the student services director position. And I just feel like all of these changes, if we don't see it kind of big picture at one time and they're just rolling in, it binds us up in being able to assess kind of like the whole department. So I just want to kind of tell you that. And I guess I'll end that with,
What
I
questions do
still
you have about that? I mean, it's not that big of a, it's director. You used to be director and assistant director, so now it's a director and a student services coordinator. And now we're opening new programming. So now there's a coordinator for autism programming across the district. And similar to our gen ed components, they have instructional coaches and they have curriculum people. We have half of an FTE for preschool through 8th grade. And that's really the department.
I guess my point is just that, if we are only approving one position at a time and we have some expectation or some estimate on what we think we're going to be paying that position, and they keep coming in at more than what we thought, then at some point someone's not going to be able to get what we thought, like where's the money coming from kind of thing. So I just would prefer to have it kind of together so we could see everybody at one time. But overall, I think it's a great, thing that we're offering. And I would just leave you with, if there's anything we can do to welcome our staff and families in for an informational night before it's opened, I think that would be great.
I'd be happy to do that.
30 seconds. Thanks for all the help. This is the best we can do to bring the audience like this idea. Over the last week. Help. Transportation. Approaching those in a responsible way. Best interest of the park. And between can we keep them in the house, help along the way to make it a sustainable program. I fully support it. It must be clear. We are legally obligated to take care of this. As far as I'm concerned, this is going to cost a lot of money no matter what. A lot of grants are going to help. But it's going to cost what it's going to cost. That does not diminish our legal requirement to take care of it. Is that a fair point?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I mean, we can still be fiscally responsible, absolutely. We
Yeah.
have to be, because school districts only have so many resources. But you're right. I mean,
Thank you. Thanks for, we've got a lot of people in town to support preschool because you do a good job. That you go.
Any further questions from Mrs. Bolton?
No.
Okay, thank you for that very lengthy and
so
detailed
sorry.
discussion.
No,
Yeah.
it's very good, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on. Dr. Shaw, how do you follow that?
Just a few numbers and then some more numbers. I'll follow with that. I'm just kidding. Stay awake. All right. So, in my board memo to you, there's a few pages in this month's memo. Starting with our 24-25 calendar of meetings, it's attached. There's a link there for you to take a look at. I try to attach the link every month with the live calendar if we've made any changes. Some information items tonight. Under my report, you see that there's some information items about our foods that we serve at lunch, snacks that we serve, and some financial insights. The other information item I have is on the MJHS storage building. It's a line item in our capital improvement plan, and it is scheduled for the summer information item this month, followed by action next month. We do anticipate getting the storage building through one of our joint purchasing cooperatives. The rest of the project will be bid out by trades. So many projects that we're doing this summer. So many projects. At MJ, we've got the chiller replacement starting the week of 5/28. We have an RFP that we're looking to issue for the bathroom partitions. Window film installations on all three buildings starting the week of 5/28. Gym's floors through all three districts, 7:30. We're painting athletic corridors at MJ. At MIS, we've got the library flooring replacement, the painting, new flooring in all of the bathrooms, install the hard surface playground, seal coating and striping of the parking lot, concrete pad and fence for the dumpsters, painting some more classrooms, and replacing a ceiling fan in the main gym. Here, we're having the removal of the wooden playground, seal coating and striping of the parking lot, the front entrance door replacements. We've been working on that project for 2 years. That'll finally happen at the end, through this summer, starting on June 10th. So in June, we'll be entering through this door right here. Nobody's going to be entering through the front door after June 10th. Everybody will be coming in through door number 2, which is the door right outside this exit sign. So when you come June 12th, you'll be coming in through a different door. Some flooring outside of the doors that we replaced last year will have some different flooring. Painting in the kindergarten, commons, and second grade bathrooms. Painting in the library columns, color to be determined by Mrs. Chorley. Our electrical project, the bus barn, underground water drain repair and replacement. And then our freezer is about, I don't know how many years that's old. We're going to rebuild that freezer over the summer for our food service department. Then a bunch of projects that we're doing in-house too. We have so many projects this summer. Those are my information items. And I talked about the freezer. I did want to take a second to say thank you to our food service department who make sure everybody's fed every day, and to our bus drivers who are the first people our kids see in the morning and the last person they see when they get dropped off at the end of the day. Special shout out to Erin Min. She was with us last month. I was hoping to see her tonight. She's not here. Without her, our buses would not get done at 4 o'clock. She stops traffic every day, guides those buses out. She's an integral part of getting our kids home on time. Without her, we have traffic delays on Wolf every day. Couple action items. We've got food service and transportation salaries on the docket for tonight. Our summer painting projects, we expect that to come in at 20, not to exceed 24.5. And then I'm asking for an RFP for the bathroom partitions. It was going to be an information and action item. We got some quotes. The quotes came in above the $50,000 construction bidding number. So instead of an information and action next month, I'm asking for information and action tonight to issue the RFP. So next month we can have an action item to approve those bids. We have the RFP ready to go. The scope of work is included in the document. It's timing. Usually we try to do the information this month, action next month, but then we would need an additional month because we need to go through the RFP process. Since we need to have this done in June and July, not in August for bathroom partitions, we're asking for a little bit of an expedited process. And then also tonight is the approval of the tentative amended budget and setting that budget hearing date.
Questions for Dr. Shaw?
Dr. Shaw, you just spoke about the bathroom partitions. Could you give a little bit more background on that and how this was put in kind of queue of priority and with some of the questions that we've had from the community about bathrooms before? I want to make sure that we have the right priority set on updates where they're needed. Thank you.
when we go through the capital plan, we have some specific dollars set in that capital plan, and you can see those dollar amounts and where they're at. And it's kind of a general, we're going to say we're going to spend this much on every year, painting, tuck pointing, seal coating. We're going to do these projects in-house. So there's 5 or 6 different items at the end that we're going to take on in-house. So we've got some dollars set aside, general amount for MES, MIS, and MJ, and it might not be the exact dollar amount for painting this year for this building. We kind of put all that money together and say, talk to the principals and say, what do you guys need done? So it's a conversation that we have with the principals on summer projects. What would you like to see done? If it's something that we're not going to be able to do, we have that conversation. If it's something that we can do within those dollars that we have allocated for the district, we try to make that happen. We have bathrooms in all 3 buildings being addressed at some type this summer. We've got some painting, we've got some flooring, and we've got partitions. So a little bit of everything in each of the different buildings. So it's a request from Dr. Rolanitis to address the bathrooms. We've tried to paint them. The partitions are just old and rusting, and the only thing that we can do at this point to enhance that appearance and clean those bathrooms is replace the partitions.
When I can speak to it too, the rust is at the base of some of these partitions to the point where if you pushed them, they might fall over. Some of the rust edges are sharp, and so it's time. After constantly mopping and waxing and around the base, they fall apart.
I can only imagine the junior high kids that enjoy playing with that. Has there been any thought given to putting up some sort of partition for the kiddos that are still needing assistance being changed? Just some kind of a partition so that they can have some privacy when they're being changed. I know that was an issue that was brought up before, but if that's something that can be added, that's just
MJ?
at the right. But when we're talking about partitions, I thought I might bring it up. But
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a quick question for you. On this storage shed at the junior high, can you speak a little bit to what, I mean, I look at the junior high, we have the little trailer for the music program, and I believe there's 1 or 2 shipping containers, one shipping container on there. So I guess maybe just a little bit more information on what's going to be stored in that, and does that shipping container go away?
Do you want me to answer? Do you want to answer? Okay, I was ready for this one, so I have this written down. The Kubota, the snow blower attachment for the Kubota, the tractor, the 9-foot wide plow for the tractor, the brush for the tractor, the grass cutter, the scissor lift, 2 snow blowers, 2 push mowers, a string trimmer, salt spreader, miscellaneous tools, and grounds equipment.
So where's all this equipment now if it's not in the storage shed?
Dr. Shaw, can you speak to your action item on the transportation salaries for us, please?
Sure. What we have is a recommendation for 4%. for transportation salaries, when we take a look back, we had struggled getting bus drivers a few years ago, and we took a look at salaries in the area. And what we did at that time is we took our bus driver salaries from $15 an hour to $18 an hour to try to help hire bus drivers and attract drivers to our district. We did that in 1 year. The following year, we started to see some movement, and we reset our transportation salaries again, reset them to $21 an hour. At that point, we started to fill positions. We were vacant positions. We started to fill positions. We still aren't fully staffed in our department with our final numbers. And the last couple of years, and before the bump from the 15 to 18 and the 18 to 21, historically the transportation department has received the same raise as the MTA contract. So the last 2 years, they also received 3.25 and 3.0, similar to the MTA contract. We're in negotiations right now, so there is no contract. And so the 4% mirror the MCSA contract is trying not to grab any kind of a random number, but linking it to another bargaining unit, since we don't currently have an MTA contract for next year. So that's where the 4% came from, and that's a little bit of history, but previous to that, it has always been linked to the MTA contract.
Are you recommending the health insurance?
Opening the discussion for health insurance for our bus drivers is we do continue to try to attract, and not just attract, but retain our bus drivers. We have a couple bus drivers who came to us, and part of keeping them was to go down an avenue of allowing them to have enough hours to be able to meet the ACA requirements. Our bus drivers and our food service department are not within any of our collective bargaining agreements, so they are at-will employees for us. And so in order to qualify for AC and the Affordable Care Act hours, they need to work 1,200 hours a year. So our bus drivers are 880 hours typical for their work year. In order for them to qualify for insurance, they worked days in the kitchen. So they come to work at 6:30 in the morning, work 6:30 to 9, so that's 2.5 hours, and then 1:30 to 4, 2.5 hours in the afternoon. So from 9 to 1:30, they've got time in the middle of the day that they're not technically at work. They guaranteed 5 hours a day. So we had a couple bus drivers who wanted insurance, and the only path to get insurance was to work additional hours, so we made available serving in the kitchen. So when they go to serve in the kitchen, what happens is any midday field trips, and frankly, our servers are making $15 or $16 an hour also. So our bus drivers, who are now at $21, $22, are making less in the kitchen than they would driving. So when there's an opportunity to drive a field trip or an afternoon or a day trip, they couldn't do that because they were obligated to work in the kitchen, and then it's too many hours in a day of work to be able to work at night. So they did not have the ability to pick up hours at the higher rate. They were obligated to be in the kitchen. So it was a little challenging for them. They wanted to drive rather than work in the kitchen, couldn't take those opportunities. And anyway, it is the only way that our drivers can qualify for insurance. It isn't ideal. It's a really long day, starting at, they start at 6:30, but some of them get here at 6:15 and earlier. And then Marita, our retiring bus driver, she did that for 27 years, every day in the bus barn, in the kitchen, back to the bus barn. She didn't drive trips. That was okay. That was part of what she did. And so by being able to retain and attract drivers, two specifically that came here with wanting insurance, being able to offer to our bus drivers a benefit of what I have in referenced is single only HMO coverage, which is second lowest only to the HSA plan for our drivers. We believe would be able to help us retain our drivers. The majority of our drivers have an insurance. Well, they're available of Medicare age, the majority of our drivers. So this would also attract and retain some younger drivers too for us. We also know that the expense for that, we submit our expense for salary and benefits on our transportation report to the state, and we're eligible for reimbursement. Again, it comes, like I referenced a little earlier, 2 years after the fact, that we do get some reimbursement from the state based on our reimbursement rate for all of our expenses, and salary and benefits definitely fall into the category of expenses.
So what we're talking about is not just offering insurance, but paying for it, right? We're proposing to pay for it similar to how we pay for our other union employees.
Similar by paying 100% of coverage for employee only, dissimilar by saying this option only. Rather than allowing you the option of the 4 choices, it would only be one option, district paid.
Meaning HMO is the only available plan to them, but they could, what you said on the transportation committee was that they could theoretically enroll their families, but they would just get the benefit of the district contributing the equivalent of the individual coverage only.
Correct.
Okay, and this is, the action item today is only the 4% salary, and do you anticipate there'll be an action item next month then that you want us to approve the benefit of district paid health HMO insurance for the bus drivers?
It would be my intention to put the HMO only for the bus drivers on the agenda for the June board meeting. If my language would have been better in my memo, it would have been an action item for tonight.
So can you explain what is the rationale to do? Ideally, what then, between the 2 months, you would be asking board approve the 4% salary raise and a $10,000 contribution, new contribution to health insurance for the 10 to 12 bus drivers. Why both?
Well, one is a cost of living increase. So cost of living increase in the salary in and of itself. For those drivers who would not take our medical insurance, they wouldn't see any increase in their salary. And honestly, you see what those salaries are. They're not big salaries. We pay more for the bus than we do for the driver in that bus.
Mm-hmm.
So the goal is to make sure that everybody in that transportation department gets something to stay the course with some of the cost of living and the inflation that we've seen. 4% seems reasonable. It's what we're giving our MCSA class, our staff this year. The health insurance is a strategy that we're looking to retain and recruit drivers. When we took a look around at what area districts do, specifically 843, Lincoln Way, and then we needed to look at some private companies because Lincoln Way services the other feeder districts in our area. So when we took a look at them, they're offering similar kind of wages with the private companies, a little less at Lincoln Way, but they're offering medical benefits for drivers. So that's our competition. So we want to be able to be competitive in the marketplace and be able to recruit and retain our drivers. And we really want to retain our drivers. We know that 2 of the drivers took the extra job for the insurance if they want to discontinue working in the kitchen, and that's happening. I can't say what happens with those 2 specific drivers, and that's just the way it is. I mean, this is what we have to offer. We're trying to make ourselves more attractive, and we really want to retain. We know that we do get some of that reimbursement back, and we also know that we don't know for a fact, but probably not everybody's going to take the benefit.
So, I'm sorry, I don't know if my microphone was on that whole time. I'm just going to tell you a couple concerns. The teacher's contract right now requires teachers to work 30 hours a week to get insurance.
No.
No, it's 40.
The teacher's contract, the teachers have medical insurance as part of their contract. The
So
MTA
part-time teachers
are
would get-
prorated. It's, say for example, if it's a $10,000 benefit, they work a 0.6 year, they would get a $6,000 benefit.
So if a teacher would work 25 hours a week, which is what we're talking about offering to bus drivers currently work 25 hours a week. If a teacher or somebody that's part of the MCSA contract.
Okay, that's
Both-
different than the
both-
teacher's
Well,
contract.
both, I'm talking about both contracts, or either or both. Do we have union employees that are not able to get the insurance coverage at the rate with which we are proposing we give our bus drivers right now?
We have, inside of our MTA contract, our teacher's contract, it's hard to say. I mean, there's plenty of teachers that are probably working 12 hours a day by the time they're done doing everything that they have to do for a day. So it's hard to say. I mean, I know what time their contract says you're here till then. And in our MCSA contract, we do have limited hours inside that contract. That's probably a fairer comparison than the teacher's contract. And so inside that contract, we do have the 1,200 hours. And so people qualify for insurance by hitting the 1,200-hour ACA limit. So we do have people who are part of the MCSA that do not qualify for medical insurance due to not hitting 1,200 hours.
So my point is that we have MCSA or potentially MTA union employees that have to work 1,200 hours to get insurance. And we're talking about offering it to our bus drivers at this point for working 880 hours. And I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about, we have food service cooks, I believe was the classification, that is working 1,002 hours a year, that we are not on the table considering offering the same benefit as bus drivers who work 880 hours a week. And I think, you have to correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's people enrolled in the MCSA and the food service that are making lower wages and have to work more hours than what is potentially being recommended for the bus drivers. Is that right?
There are people in the food service department that are paid lower wages than our bus drivers. Their starting wage is lower. And there are two members of the kitchen staff that work more than the bus drivers, and those are the two cooks.
I'm concerned that if we offer this benefit to our bus drivers at 25 hours a week, 880 hours a year, without looking at the other employees that make a lower wage and have to work more hours in order to qualify for insurance, that there's going to be, it's going to cause it's going to, you get my point. Like, if those employees might not see this as a great thing, they might come back and say, well, what about me?
And they can do that.
Sean, questions? Well, I finance meeting, offering the insurance, in the district paying the cost of that insurance, and it was shared and to that. Not many people will take it, but this is to perhaps get some of the younger bus drivers in. Has there been other kind of outside the box thinking, or maybe it's not even outside the box thinking, because I'm curious how the folks that don't need to have the insurance will see the district paying $10,000 insurance for younger folk versus perhaps having a pool of money where there can be bonuses or there can be aids put on the bus, and because we saw one person, bus driver, resign this year because of some kind of problems that were on the bus. Whether you folks agree with that assessment or not matters, but if there are discipline issues and we're in the district fund. So those are some. For aids on the buses. So thank you.
And if people, I'm not having a debate with the audience, I'm saying statistically, our drivers are older, they're on Medicare, and that's a legal truth. We're trying to attract people, and you pay attention to what their businesses are doing. I mean, everybody's gonna want it, but we have to pay attention to what they're offering. That's true. You and I can talk later, I'm not having a debate right now, we can talk.
Yes, please. I would encourage the two of you, if you have questions, please, you can discuss. Okay, any further questions, Dr. Shaw?
I would to somewhat respond to Jim is then I would ask that consideration and thought be given to other ideas to attract folks that would reward more than just people that can take insurance. Perhaps it's more than 4% of a raise. Perhaps it's a bonus structure. Could fit everyone retain and reward the people that have been long-serving here. So I'm just asking for additional consideration and thought to be given to other ideas because we've want to retain good talent. Extremely and I'm not discounting it. My husband was a bus driver, and he loved that job. He worked in the kitchen. He put in his time here, and he knows some of the issues. So I have a little bit of background on these other issues that these bus drivers face. And I don't think insurance, funding it for a few people that might come in the door, is the way to go when we can reward everybody.
Eric, thank you. I just want to tie a bow on this perspective is, you know, at $10,000 is the goal to employ 12 bus drivers is the goal is $120,000. Now, if we're saying that this is going to attract the bus drivers and enable us to retain the bus drivers, then we have to assume that that is what they want and that is what they will take. So we have to assume that 10 to 12 bus drivers will elect to take the coverage and that will have that cost. When we look at the transportation fund currently, we're projecting a deficit position. We're in a deficit position. We're projecting a deficit position. Adding $120,000 onto a fund that has a deficit position is going to force us to take the money out of the educational fund, which represents our classrooms. And we're not hiring staff for our classrooms, and we're not hiring paraprofessionals. And, you know, we have teacher contract negotiations going on right now. The reality is we don't have enough money in the transportation fund. That is where this will come from. There's not enough money, so we'd have to take it out of the classrooms. And that is another concern.
We are not taking money out of the classroom as part of this discussion at all.
Dr. Shaw, can you comment, during our finance meeting, Jim wasn't there, when we had discussed the deficit position in the transportation fund, and you discussed the method to correct that would be to come out of the educational fund. Is that right?
I said that we would have the ability to take a look at how the levy was structured. So one of the strategies is how the levy is structured. We also have the ability to take a look at our EBF funding that we do have in the O&M fund. So we have the ability to use our levy from the O&M fund. We have the ability to restructure levy money from the education fund. That's true. We have the ability. We have a tax cap on our levy amount in our extension, so you can use your levy how you need to, depending on what that looks like.
I don't think in the finance committee we discuss it. I believe, to my recollection, we discussed it coming out of the educational fund, and that it would be the levy would be reallocated to where the current allocation to the educational fund would be reduced and the transportation fund would be increased.
It just depends on what that levy looks like at that point in time. What we do is we write our budget. We do our budget first, and then we do our levy. So first thing we do is our budget and make sure that we have everything that we need in our budget. I don't think the finance committee would ever support taking money away from classrooms or education in order to fund a bus driver insurance. I don't think that was ever even part of the conversation. It's a little bit of a leap.
Well, and if I can, just a point of order really quickly too. When we do our levy, inherent in the levy is the increase in what we receive in revenue based on PTEL or CPI, you know, so CPI up to 5%. We've been, the last couple of years, CPI has been high, typically around 2.5%. We have a $20 million budget, so round numbers, 2.5% of 20 million is $500,000. So, where we're at today versus next year, if it was a 2.5% CPI, which we're trending higher than that, we'd have 500,000 in new revenue. If we know in our budget that we have, because open enrollment would precede the budget, if we knew that an open enrollment, 5 drivers take the insurance, it's $50,000. Of that new revenue, we would put $50,000 in transportation. We wouldn't be taking anything out of education. We'd just be reallocating those new dollars to that. Is there truth in the statement that, yeah, if we didn't have 5 drivers taking insurance, we put the whole $500,000 in the ed fund or the operations fund or whatever fund needed it? That's absolutely true. In general, our budget, about 70% of our money goes directly into classrooms. And about 30% of our money is distributed to all of the other support services that support those classrooms, whether it's facility improvements, it's paying maintenance staff, it's paying the folks in the office to do payroll. Those costs, those fixed costs are always going to be there to support what's going on in our classrooms. And our spending there is on par in terms of a general percentage with our counterparts in the area. Those costs will fluctuate from time to time. When the MCSA contract was passed, they saw a large increase in their salaries, driven largely by the increase in the minimum wage and trying to remain competitive with our peers. And so when we bargained that contract, most of those our parapros are in the classroom supporting, but a lot of those MCSA employees were in support roles. And so we did see that go up, but that's just reacting to the market and a cost of doing business. What we're seeing today in the market for drivers is an increase in benefits because the number of individuals with a CDL that are willing to kind of take those early morning hours and then those later afternoon hours without having that 4.5 hours in the middle, there's not a lot of people willing to do that. And the workforce is changing a bit. And we talked a little bit about this on Monday night. Our drivers used to be a lot of parents, now we have a few that are grandparents. One that might be great grandpa. We've been very fortunate to have a lot of our drivers that live in our community, that have been members of our community and drive for us because, they live here. But the longevity, those drivers that stick around for 10, 12, 15 years and beyond, we're just not seeing that. We have 2 drivers that have been here longer than me, and I've only been here for 4 years. And we've experienced some turnover. So I'm 100% with you that every dollar, I would love to spend every dollar in the classroom supporting kids, 100% on things that are research-based, that are going to improve student achievement. So we're all about that is our business. There is an overhead cost, a cost to the lights and the food service and all the other kind of stuff that just goes along with supporting that. So when those costs rise, or there's market forces going on, I do believe we have to adjust. That's why Dr. Shaw is making her recommendation. So I agree with you in concept. I do. I feel it's our obligation to recommend to you that we stay competitive with our peers. We saw this a few years ago when we had low salaries there. We saw this a few years ago when we were desperately short on subs and we were paying $95 a day and other districts are paying $130, $140, $150 a day. Anytime we get behind the curve in terms of compensation, we start to struggle. And, it's one thing, we can onboard a sub relatively quickly. Onboarding a bus driver takes 6 weeks to 2 months. And so we end up if we get caught behind the 8 ball there, that is a really hard rock to get up from underneath. So completely understand where you're coming from, and I do support the money going into the classrooms, but this is just us trying to make sure that we, have bus drivers that are long-term employees that know our kids, that know our routes. I mean, when we've had bus drivers retire in the past, Mr. Turner or our drivers know their students and see them going from kindergarten all the way through 8th grade. Sometimes entire families, and that's really what we want.
Okay, any further questions for Dr. Shaw? All right, Mr. Henson.
Good evening. I'll be quick here. I just had a couple of things. I talked a little bit about our network refresh, just an update with that. What I hope to have done by today, we moved to Friday. We'll be doing maybe some minor installing of the switches in the actual locations and prep to start programming the access points. I talked a little bit about our Department of Innovation and Technology and the Illinois Century Networks, upgrading the internet at each campus, and the WAN connection between both locations. And I told my tech team I'd always give them a shout out if they accomplished a certification. So congratulations to Javier. He took and passed two separate tests to become Incident IQ Administrator certified. So congratulations to him. Good for him. Yep. And then I do have one action item later on for the approval of Chromebooks for our first fifth graders and parapros. And that is my report for this evening.
Just a quick report at the finance meeting, and I appreciate it. You can see your passion in what you do, in making sure that the network is kept safe. So I just wanted to say thank you again for that presentation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, principal reports. Start with Dr. Leonidas. We have an event coming here pretty soon, I think, at Central that you might want to talk about.
Now it's on. I got to repeat all that? They handed it to me off, so I'm just going with it. Okay. Yeah, I'm just talking to you all night. The last thing, well, no, not the second to last thing. I also want to say we had a fantastic music concert and a jazz concert in the last couple of weeks, but the last week was a music concert, and it was Karen Busine's last concert, and I thought it was a nice, fitting send-off for Karen. She's done a lot for our music program, and I think it's really important that we acknowledge that. So congratulations to Karen on a she's not really retiring. She's just moving on to something new. But she's meant a lot for the music program for the last at least 15, probably closer to 20 years. She's been with me for 15 years as a parent, Music Booster member, and as an employee. So congratulations to her. I just want to make sure I get that out there. And honestly, my last thing, really mean it this time. Graduation is Sunday. Thank you for filling out your forms. And I appreciate those you are coming. We are inside. I'm sorry about that change that I waited and sent you that information, and then that very day, it came back different. So Lincoln Way is requiring that we're inside this year, and just keep in mind that it might be a little warm. Just there's no air conditioning in the field house, so so we'll be there in the field house. Dr. Cohen and I have already been talking about maybe making some changes for next year, because the graduation date, we want it to be closer to the end of school if we can. So we're going to look at some different options for next year. But this year, we'll be in there. So if you have any questions, we'll be there about 11 o'clock. You don't have to be here that early. We'll have you go straight to the stage. This year, we don't have to worry about anything blowing away. That's the good sign about being inside. So you'll have your program on your seat. So you'll know where to sit. And it'll be marked as to what students you'll be coming up to congratulate. So. All right. Any questions? I took your line. I'm sorry. You always ask.
I'll repeat. Any questions?
Okay. The microphone's on too.
All
so.
right. Mr. McAtee.
I won't be as long as some people, but that's okay. I want to reiterate what Dr. Unlada said about the IAR. The teachers worked so hard this year with a brand new EL education curriculum. It was challenging. It's hard. It's rigorous for the students. It's rigorous for the teachers. And to show that amount of growth in just the first year, that shows their commitment to their craft. They're really working hard on presenting and helping the students grow and to achieve. So kudos to all of our teachers for everything that they have done this year. Speaking of band, we had our band and orchestra registration nights on Monday evening. And our numbers are just phenomenal. Next year, we have 65 students registered for a beginning band. Crazy. It's 8 more than what we have this year. Our cadet band is up to 38. We are at 30 this year. And our orchestra went from 30 to 50. So our music numbers are just skyrocketing. So kudos. It's because of the recorded concert. Absolutely. So without the so kudos to our directors, Mrs. Busey, Ms. Clifford, and Ms. Snyder. They're really working at building this program, and they're doing just a magnificent job with it. In my board report, I called it the celebration issue. If you haven't had a chance, please take a look through it. Lots and lots of pictures. We had our first MIS Launching Imagination art fair. We had over 250 people come through the door. Every student had something that they displayed, had a piece displayed throughout the evening. Next year, we're already planning on expanding it. And we're going to have visual arts. We're also going to have some performing arts next year. So it's going to be even bigger and better next year. Lots of things, concert pictures. We had an awesome assembly. Thank you to Dr. Johnson for our 5th grade students. Someone from the Illinois Storm Chasers came in and presented to our 5th graders. Very cool experiments. He created a vapor cloud that rolled over the students, and it was just a lot of fun. We had a student come to the building in a fire truck. Vinny Bensick won the essay contest, so all of his classmates were out watching that. We had, what else do we have? 2 Girl Scout troops are working on their bronze awards. So they're doing projects within the building. So lots of great stuff happening at MES, just building wide for everybody. We have our step up night tomorrow, Friday evening. It's going to be great. It's going to be crowded. We're up to over 80% of our enrollment is going to be there Friday night. We're up to over almost 270 students as of last time I looked. So we only have 340. So it's going to be a lot of fun. You know, pray for great weather so we can get some of the kids outside. But it's going to be a lot of fun. A lot of great things planned by the PTA. So thank you for all of their hard work. But it should be a wonderful evening. Last thing, and I promise I'm not going to keep going. We have our student recognition celebration next Thursday morning, the last day of school at 9 o'clock. We recognize all the students, their hard work on the Fast Bridge, on, whatever clubs they are part of. So if you can make it, it's a wonderful event. We're inviting all the parents in for it as well. It's about an hour-ish, 45 minutes to an hour. So 9 o'clock next Thursday morning, if you can make it in. That's it.
Any questions for Mr. May?
I love the banner that the Girl Scout troop made, and the celebration with the kids. What do you for next Thursday? What are you calling that? The recognition.
The student recognition celebration.
That, if you had an opportunity to go, folks, it made me cry last year. The student growth awards that you give was, the students didn't expect to be applauded. Some of the students that had struggled, and now they're being recognized, was great. So I'll be happy to be there.
Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Torley, this is recorder.
Recorder concert. I mean, what? This is a success, right? It's everything we hoped it would be. No, really proud of those third graders, though, because once again, it was just fantastic, and Ms. Clifford does a great job. Thanks also, reiterate to everybody who donated and supported our staff members during Staff Appreciation Week. Everybody had a great time, and it's always so nice to be appreciated. I'm so proud, and we also say that our IA scores belong to everybody. When they're great, they belong to all of us, and when they're not great, they belong to all of us. But I would be remiss if I didn't send a special shout out to our third grade teachers, because they have the hardest job anytime we roll out a new resource, because the kids that they have, the resource assumes that they've started in kindergarten, first and second grade, and they haven't. And so they have to backfill, and they have to slow things down. And it's more challenging for our third grade teachers than it is for any other grade level teacher. And the fact that we went up by 10 percentage points of students that met or exceeded IAR is like phenomenal, just phenomenal. The teachers, the kids, of course, obviously, they are the ones that did it. The teachers supported them, and then Mrs. Pierrick and Mrs. Feeney have been great supports to that grade level. Those two are just exactly what the teachers need, and I just couldn't be more proud of all of their hard work. We very tearfully are saying goodbye to Sherry DeSalvo and Kim Ruth. They have been in our district for 22 and 25 years. Kim Ruth has been in the same classroom for all 22 years. Found that out today. That is insane. And Sherry's been in first grade and second grade, and they're leaving behind such a great legacy and big, big shoes to fill. And we, Mr. McAtee and I took students to the Illinois, Three Rivers Illinois Principal Association Student Recognition Breakfast and Ceremony. It was a different location this year. And we were able to recognize Sean Mulcahy and Montserrat Rodriguez, which was great with their parents. And then we snuck their teachers in, which was really fun because they're the ones that nominate them. And I know it's for the Principals Association, but they're their teachers. So it's really kind of fun to be able to do that. And finally, kindergarten and early childhood teachers that were here tonight. Our third grade teachers get them at the back end, but man, what those teachers put into children in their early formative educational years is nothing short of they are walking angels here on earth, because when you look at where kindergartners start and where they end in the school year, you just can't believe they're the same kids. And so those teachers, they're amazing. And I'm just really proud of all that they accomplish. Proud of all of my teachers, don't get me wrong. But it's just really to see where our kindergartners started and where they are now heading into first grade is just, they've really grown up a lot this year. So that's it. Thank you.
Any questions to Mrs. Chorley? Okay, moving on. Mrs. Briscoe, Lincoln Way Area Special Education.
Good evening. So the bill we will receive on June 1st will be a pre-bill for the 24-25 school year, building and transportation charges only. There are a couple of districts who will likely be underbilled for transportation at the end of the year. The reason for this is that billing stops in January, since it is pre-billed in June and July without actual information. Essentially, they have a larger use of transportation during the year than originally projected last summer at budget time. Mr. Englert will follow up with the districts to see if they want to pay the estimated amount owed so that they can claim it on their 23-24 transportation claim or have it net out against their ed fund refunds. And let's see, for action items, we approved creative clinical consulting, transportation ESY rates, ABM custodial services, YACOS therapy. We approved the 24-25 school year, summer office hours, the 12-month employee holiday, and our biggest one is that we approved the new Pioneer Grove principal, Emily Lechu, I think is how you say her last name. And that's it.
Questions from Mrs. Briscoe? Okay, thank you for that report.
You're welcome.
There are numerous FOIA requests. Kathy, have you responded to all those? All done. Okay. Moving on. Action items. First is approval of previous minutes.
I move to approve minutes from the April 17th, 2024 regular session and closed session meetings as presented.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, let's call the vote.
Mrs. Briscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
Mrs. McMillan?
Yes.
Mrs. Ost?
Yes.
Mrs. Tani?
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski? Mr. Andreessen?
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. Next up is district bills. This month was Mr. Andreessen.
Here is show kind of time with me on one thing is bill and two bills based on percentage of 44% of negotiation, 23 was fed, almost 20% reported, and it should also be noted our legal bills were originally budgeted $50,000 this year. Right now that is 5, of which almost 72,000 is already spent. We're almost at the end of this fiscal year, which is that being said, I'm in favor of approving this bill as presented.
Second.
Second by Ms. Briscoe. Any discussion? Okay, please call the vote.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
Mrs. McMillan?
Yes.
Mrs. Ost?
Yes.
Mrs. Tani?
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Andreessen? Mrs. Briscoe?
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. Next up is personnel.
I move to approve personnel recommendations 7C 1 through 7 as presented, subject to successful background check and verification of credentials if applicable.
Second by Ms. Honey. Any questions? Okay, please call the vote.
Mrs. McMillan?
Yes.
Mrs. Ost?
Yes.
Mrs. Tani?
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Andreessen?
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Yes. Okay, motion passed. Next up is consent agenda.
Move to approve consent agenda items 7B 1 through 4 as presented.
Second.
Second by Ms. Briscoe. Any discussion?
The only thing I want to say is the Washington DC trip. I had submitted some questions the board at this point has not seen the contract for that. I'd questioned, I'm rounding numbers at $1,500 a student, with seventh graders. We are clearly over the $25,000 threshold for a contract to go to the formal request for proposal process. So I'm not sure, those questions were not answered. I don't know where, and then the insurance, I was questioning the insurance provided by which should be reflected in the contract if we would see that. So can those items be forwarded to the board after the meeting or next week?
Sorry. The bill itself is paid directly from parents to the vendor. It is not our bill, therefore an RFP is not necessary. We're not the ones writing the check. We did get 3 quotes. So
So Dr. Cohen,
I mean, I'm unfamiliar with any of these tours ever having to go to RFP in any.
right, yeah, that makes sense. I'm trying to find my note on this because I wanted to read to you. Let me find my note. Can you give me a second here? Papers.
PC's on page 420 in the packet. If you made notes on that page, it says 420.
That is very helpful. Thank you, Jim. That's exactly where I found it. Okay, so here's my concern, and this was brought up, I think, last year when we had talked about some of the band and music department field trips. Our policy 6240, I'm going to read a clause out of here. It says, privately arranged trips, including those led by district staff members, shall not be presented as or construed to be sponsored by the district or the school. This is the important part. The district does not provide liability coverage protection for privately arranged trips and is not responsible for any damages arising from them. So I believe this would then qualify as a privately arranged trip because we're not the ones doing the arranging, right? And the parents are paying them. So I just want to kind of make it clear that our policy, the board is saying that we are not, the district is not taking on that liability, and we, shall not be representing that as a district trip.
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
That said, if there were any sort of an issue on a trip because of a lack of supervision on our part, while that is listed there in policy, I don't think it would absolve us of any responsibility if we were to not somehow supervise our students properly, or again, it's our staff that are going on that trip and monitoring them. So, and I recall when we had this conversation last year, we did talk to Click about that, and we are covered should there be a mishap or something on one of these trips. I mean, worst case scenario is some sort of an automobile accident, et cetera. If there's an accident, the attorney that's retained by the student's family would sue everybody. They're not just going to pick the tour operator. They would look for any party. And so, while that is true, while we do have this in the policy and this is part of school code, the fact that this 8th grade trip is led by our staff, we are insured just in case there is an issue.
I think you're right. I think I remember when we talked about it, it's probably a year ago now or close to it, that there was our insurance agent recommended we do something.
What we do is we make sure that they name us as an insured party on their, and once we sign the contract, they'll give us a copy and we'll be named as an insured on their insurance. So that's the correct. Thank you.
So, but the terms of the contract would also say, because that Guardian contract that I looked at last year, even if they give you a certificate of insurance, the contract says we will not cover anything and you have to go get your own insurance and that thing. But so the certificate of insurance proves that they have it, but whether they're actually providing it to you is in that contract.
I think what Dr. Cohen is saying is entirely true, that if something were to happen, they're going to be responsible, and some attorney is going to come after everybody who's involved in it, so they're not new to this game. They understand how it works.
And the parents know we're not representing it like
Absolutely.
we're doing it. They're
Yep.
going to them anyway. So,
Yep.
okay.
Any other discussion? Okay, please call the vote.
Mrs. Ost.
Yes.
Mrs. Tunney.
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski.
Yes.
Mr. Andreessen.
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe. Mr. Bush.
Yes.
Mrs. McMillan.
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. All right, so we got a slight change in this next one, so I'll take it. I move to approve the tentative amended budget FY 2024 as presented and direct the administration to display the tentative amended budget and give notice of where and when the tentative amended budget may be viewed and time and place of amended budget hearing. I further move to schedule the amended budget hearing for June 17th, which is a Monday, 2024 at 6 p.m. in the district boardroom. Second by Mr. Andreessen. Any discussion? Okay, please call the vote.
Mrs. Tunney.
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski. Yes. Mr. Andreessen.
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe.
Yes.
Mr. Bush.
Yes.
Mrs. McMillan. Yes. Mrs. Ost.
I'm going to abstain from this because I am unsure that the budget takes into account some of the changes that are pending. I tried to say that I had a question, but I will just abstain at this point. Thank you.
Okay, motion passed. 6-0 to abstain. Next is Chromebooks.
I move to approve the purchase of 390 new Lenovo 500E Gen 3 Chromebooks for first grade, fifth grade, and paraprofessionals at a total cost of $174,833.10 as presented.
I have to Lisa because you're closest and ears closest to you. Any discussion? Okay, please call the vote.
Mrs. Zelinski.
Yes.
Mr. Andreessen.
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe.
Yes.
Mr. Bush.
Yes.
Mrs. McMillan. Yes. Mrs. Ost.
Yes.
Mrs. Tunney.
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. Next up is food service salaries.
I move to approve the 2024-25 food service salaries as presented.
Second.
Honey, any questions? Okay, please call the vote.
Mr. Andreessen.
Yes.
Mrs. Briscoe.
Yes.
Mr. Bush.
Yes.
Mrs. McMillan. Mrs. Ost.
Yes.
Mrs. Tunney.
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski. Yes.
Okay, motion passed. Next up is transportation salaries.
Move to approve the 2024-25 transportation salaries as presented.
Second.
Ms. Honey, any discussion?
For clarification, we're approving right now a 4% wage increase only.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other discussion, questions? Okay, please call the vote.
Mrs. Briscoe. Yes. Mr. Bush.
Yes.
Mrs. McMillan. Yes. Mrs. Ost.
Yes.
Mrs. Tunney.
Yes.
Mrs. Zelinski. Yes. Mr. Andreessen.
Okay, motion passed. Last but not least is the RFP for bathroom partitions.
I move that the board approve the recommendation to issue RFP for bathroom partitions at MGP.
Seconded by Ms. Zelinski. Any discussion? Please call the vote.
Mr. Bush.
Yes.
Mrs. McMillan. Yes. Mrs. Ost. Yes. Mrs. Tunney. Yes. Mrs. Zelinski. Yes. Mr. Andreessen. Mrs. Briscoe.
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. Next up, items for the June meeting.
I'll have the transportation recommendation for insurance. I'll have action item on the MJHS storage building. And I should have the MJ bathroom partition bid results. And then the extra meeting will be the budget, amended budget presentation. June 17th.
And there's going to be no difference in the presentation of both models. Essentially merely a formality, is that correct?
At this point, yes, I have no changes. I anticipate no changes.
Next month, we have a lot for the agenda. We will start with a reception for the board meeting for our Galaxy Award winners. That'll be 6:15, usually ice cream social here in the cafeteria outside of the MES. We will have the e-learning plan hearing followed by approval. We will have presentation from our principals on their school improvement plan summarizing the year. And this will be an either or. Either we will be reviewing the strategic plan progress for the 23-24 school year, or we will be doing the Northwestern University Center for Talent Development's gifted report. Having 3 on top of Galaxy Award and all that is probably not, we would be here too late. So one of those 2 will be pushed to July just to spread that out, depending on what we get from Northwestern and how soon we get it. And we'll also have an informational item on music keys for discussion. Also, one of the items, while this is not for June 12th, we had a board meeting, special board meeting scheduled for for next Monday, the 20th. I have had a personal conflict come up that I cannot move next Monday, the 20th. I apologize for the late notice, but it just came up today. I was hoping that we could look at either Tuesday, the 25th, the day after Memorial Day, or Thursday, the 27th, also of the same week.
Do you mean the 28th? 30th? Yeah.
I'm looking at June.
June.
28th or the 30th.
Okay. 20.
I could do either.
Yeah, I would normally say Wednesday, the 29th, but we have bargaining that night, and we just conferred with our MTA colleagues and told them we would give them the full length of time. So,
Are we talking about
Next
I'm on.
The Monday one that we were supposed to have on the 20th, he wants to move to the 28th or 30th.
Oh, yeah, you have one.
I can't do the 28th.
We're not doing
So there's a District 843 board meeting on the 28th. Is Thursday, May 30th acceptable?
Yes, for me.
I will not be available that day. I will not. Doesn't mean you guys can't.
Well, as long as we have the goals meeting before the June board meeting on the 12th, what about, is Monday the 3rd or Wednesday the 5th? Or is that too far out?
Either one of those days is fine.
Same.
I'm on vacation the first week of June. Okay, be out of state. But
I'll be out county when that's it. Doctor's appointment, I have to take her to. Wait, what day? The 3rd and what else? Did you say the 4th?
I was looking at just Mondays and Wednesdays, but Eric's out of town.
Eric's out.
Sorry.
How about I put together a Calendly and send it out, so that way you can check the days that you're available, and we'll see what overlaps. Let's do every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and find one that works. That's okay.
Works, right?
Rather,
It's like one of those Venn diagrams, you're trying to see how much overlap you have.
yeah.
Well, we might have to just also cut the fact that maybe we'll just have people might be able to show up. It's not optimal, but it could be that situation where.
Well, I will let you know what that availability, what that looks like. I will get that out tomorrow. And then if everybody can reply by, early next week, that would give us time to get that on the calendar and get it on the website.
Dr. Cohen, can we arrange, and we just want to tell the public, Eric, about what, can you explain a little bit about what we're going to be accomplishing in this meeting? And then Dr. Cohen, can we arrange for the stream to happen so that the public can watch that? It's a, I think, fairly important topic that people, it would be an open meeting anyway, but could we do the stream is the question.
Sure. Then we have to face this way.
Right.
For what? What are we talking about?
It's up to the board if you want. If you want to have a small intimate, that's fine. If you want to put it up there, it's fine. That's your decision.
Are we talking about your goal setting meeting?
Yes.
I thought that was supposed to be a closed.
I thought that was a closed session.
goals are not in closed session, evaluation is in closed session.
So the thought is that meeting will be both. So one is that the goals that we will use to evaluate, mark on and discuss in open session, and then because it's specifically related to his evaluation, then we go to closed session to discuss how those goals will be implemented and how we will evaluate those goals. So it's tricky how it's going to work, I guess, but it's just kind of the way we started. Now, that's not to say that the goals that are established for his evaluation are the district's overall goals. They should align pretty darn closely, but it's not to say that they're going to be word for word. We have a strategic plan, other things like that, but I think Dr. Cohen previously with his admin team have always developed 20 or so kind of priorities maybe, and then you get to this a list, and then you shrink it down.
Well, you're killing me, Smalls. 20. Jeez, okay.
Well, you had 20 last year, but then you shrink it down to 3.
We have our instructional priorities. I can tell you. Well, I can tell you what 1A and 1B are going to be. Number one is going to be the follow up the work next year that's going to take place based on recommendations from Northwestern and the development of programming for our most talented learners. That's going to be 1A. 1B is going to be the formal rollout of our MTSS process. That's going to include a review by the parent advisory team and formalized interventions, both behavioral and academic, across all 3 buildings in a standard format. So basically focusing, because we spent a lot of time these last few years on Tier 1, especially in ELA, and I think there's been a lot of progress made there, but now it's time to start working on the periphery for those students that need a little more and those students that need a little more to catch up. So those 2 goals would be the 2 that I would bring forward and for the goal setting meeting, and I'll have some more documentation for that. We'll get there.
Got it. Okay. Follow up. Okay, for the good Mokena.
I have a couple. Good luck to the state track meet participants. The Park District Foundation provides grants and scholarships to students based on financial need, and also students that are moving on or maybe thinking about moving on to in a Park District field. So those monies are available, and I would ask that that anyone that has any questions, just reach out and I can help you find that information. And I think I want to give a special shout out to the bus drivers and the crossing guard, Miss Min, for the, I'm not sure how included they were in the staff appreciation. I would assume that they were, but I want to just make sure that they were appreciated as much in this week or last week. Sorry. Thank you.
Anything else for the good Mokena?
Well, the last one where we were talking about follow-up discussion, but I just wanted to thank Dr. Shaw for putting together this amended budget because there was a lot of work and there's lots of information in such a short time. Thank you so much. And then I want to thank you, Dr. Johnson, and our teachers for our principals, our entire staff for something to celebrate in our scores. And I'm so proud to be part of this district. So thank you, everybody, for your hard work.
Okay. All right.
Hey, Eric, sorry. I thought you were going to say something and then I was going to the PTA, is the doing the color run on the last day of school. We have over 600 friends. I think the number was 620 the last time. Huge. Plus you're out of our, I think, we're an
be so fun. So I encourage, like I said, board meeting, if anything, come and cheer people on while they run. And if you want to jump in and throw color, that would be fun, and that would be open to anybody too. We'll have food vendors there, and we have raised, we've raised thousands of dollars. So I'll say that. I don't want to steal anybody's thunder, but so that, and congratulations to everybody on the preliminary IAR. It is extremely impressive, and I can't wait to see the report card when it comes out, and it's really great. Thank you for a great year, and hopefully everybody has a good summer, last day of school in a week, right? So thank you.
Purposes of the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, or dismissal of employees and collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives with no action after closed session. Second by Ms. Zielinski. Any discussion? Please call the vote.
Mrs. McMillan?
Yes.
Mrs. Ost?
Yes.
Mrs. Tunney?
Yes.
Mrs. Zielinski?
Yes.
Mr. Andreessen? Mrs. Briscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Passed. 4 people that stuck it out. Almost 4 hours.